Introduction. The primary world is that of a song of ice and fire. Due to an unforeseen event, Yaren finds himself traversing into this realm, becoming the firstborn of House Tran on the island of Greyjoy. The War of the Usurper has long since concluded, and with the news of the hand of the king's demise, the kingdom is on the brink of new turmoil. Witness how our protagonist, Yaren Tran, harnesses the extraordinary abilities bestowed upon him through time and space, carving out his own narrative in a world where the seven gods retreat and the old gods resurge. Chapter 1. The Initial Cause. On a summer day by the seaside, waves of pristine white foam rhythmically crashed against the rocky shore, enveloping the land in a refreshing mist. I cannot return. How is it that I cannot return? Where shall I find a peculiar energy? To act foolishly is to invite demise, lamented a young boy seated upon a stone by the sea, his gaze lost in the ebb and flow of the tide, his dark hair dancing in the breeze, his heart tumultuous. The boy's name was Yaren Tran, a traveler from another world. Though an orphan, he was, like most, an ordinary individual in his past life. One day, while browsing a small stall, he discovered a crystal the size of his fingertip, which he intended to use as a decorative piece for his computer desk. That night, after finishing his work on the computer, he turned off the lights and observed the crystal emanating a faint glow. Yaren, an avid reader of novels, thought to himself, "Finally, it is my turn." After some experimentation, he decisively pricked his finger with a fine needle, allowing a drop of blood to touch the crystal. The crystal mysteriously vanished, reappearing in an indescribable location, seemingly attuned to his thoughts. In that moment, a stream of information flooded his mind. Upon absorbing the information, Yaren was overwhelmed with joy. The crystal was a core fragment of a time travel system, a manifestation of the primordial laws of time and space. However, one day, the system gained sentience, developing ambitions of evolution, and began to cultivate individuals with time-traveling potential as hosts, siphoning the laws of time and space from various realms. As its ambitions grew, it indiscriminately consumed the laws of fate and life, ultimately causing a catastrophic clash within itself that led to its self-destruction. The crystal, then, was a fragment created by this system, designed to completely integrate the various laws, utilizing the core power of time and space as its foundation, with the laws of consumption as its axis. Yet, being merely a fragment of a fragment, it was diminutive and thus limited in function, possessing only two capabilities. Function 1. It could absorb any special energy to replenish the crystal's energy or enhance its own, albeit at a meager conversion rate of approximately 100:1 due to its size. Function 2. Once the crystal's energy was fully replenished, it could traverse time and space. There were two forms of time travel. The first consumed all energy for a permanent stay, while the second required only a small amount of energy for a specified time-space scene, allowing for a mere 5 seconds of presence. Of course, this was merely the current state. Should it absorb other fragments, its capabilities would expand. Overjoyed, Yaren resolved to attempt a journey through time to test the authenticity of his newfound powers. Without hesitation, he mentally commanded the crystal to initiate the traversal. With a fleeting moment, the room was devoid of young Alan's presence. The memories then transitioned to the position once occupied by the boy. It turned out that during the initial crossing, the crystal energy was not yet fully charged. To facilitate the journey, it consumed all physical form and a significant portion of the soul's power. Fortunately, the host's intrinsic energy, serving as temporal energy, incurred no loss, allowing for the transport of merely a weakened soul. Thus, Alan's spirit was preserved. The soul, governed by the laws of time and space, was reincarnated as a child, yet the memories remained elusive until today, when he finally regained them at the age of 10. Having lived for many years, he understood that this realm was the world of a song of ice and fire, and his family was a vassal house of House Stark, known as the Treason family of Greyjoy Island. Their banner depicted a figure hanging against a black backdrop on a blue field, with the family motto proclaiming, "Hang my enemies." As the eldest son of the Treason family, Alan Lance's father was the Viscount Shaelin Treason. Due to their unique geographical position, their territory was merely a medium-sized island where the inhabitants relied on fishing for sustenance while contending with various pirates. Consequently, the local populace was robust, and the lord had to be martial, which is why he had arranged for Alan to undergo military training since the age of 8. As he pondered in silence, a gruff voice resonated from behind him. "Young Master Alan, I believe today is not a day for you to rest. If you do not attend class, Mr. Yazbu will brandish his sword and spank you. Chapter 2. Lessons and Discussions. All right, Mr. Oren, you are ever so punctual. The 7 know I have never missed a swordsmanship class, and today shall be no exception, Alan exclaimed as he sprang to his feet and dashed towards Greyjoy Castle. Indeed, young Master Alan, Oren called out while hastening to keep pace with him. At that moment, in the training grounds of Greyjoy Castle, a middle-aged man donned in a pale yellow jacket paced the area with a serious demeanor. He was Alan's swordsmanship instructor, named Yazbu Oryekon, hailing from the western continent of Bravos, across the narrow sea. Originally sent as an overseer for the Iron Bank of Bravos, his purpose in Greyjoy Castle was to ensure that Viscount Shailen Traylon repaid his debts. However, with the intention of keeping him occupied and providing him with lodging and sustenance, the cunning Viscount cleverly appointed him as Alan's swordsmanship teacher. Teacher Yazbu, I have arrived. A youthful, melodious voice rang out from behind as Alan Traylon halted, breathless. Upon hearing this, Yazbu Oryekon turned to greet him. Where have you been, little one? Begin with 100 sword strikes for practice, and to warm up, Yazbu instructed. Of course, teacher, Alan replied, picking up the large wooden sword from the nearby rack. He diligently raised it overhead and struck downwards, each movement executed with earnestness. Lacking his golden finger abilities, he relied on such rigorous training to bolster his sense of security. Seeing this, Yazbu was quite pleased. Very well, little one. Today, I shall teach you the techniques of the great sword. Unlike conventional sword attacks, which focus on thrusting, the great sword allows for both thrusting and cleaving. After Yasubu finished speaking, he grasped the large sword beside him and approached the straw man. In an instant, he thrust the sword forward, piercing through the straw figure, followed by a horizontal slash that severed its head. I believe you have observed that mastering the great sword requires not only skill, but also the strength to wield it, he stated. The techniques I previously taught you have been grasped. Henceforth, you must practice daily, swinging your sword whenever time permits, until your speed matches my own. While technique is undoubtedly vital, ultimately, it is the swiftness of your strikes that matters most. Yes, master, Eileen replied. At that moment, in the conference hall of Grey Stranglehold Fortress, Viscount Shailen surveyed the assembled knights and nobles, proclaiming, "News has arrived from King's Landing. Our esteemed Prime Minister, Lord John Eileen, has passed away. According to our informants, his death appears rather suspicious, as if he were poisoned." The noble knights exchanged astonished glances. How could this be? Is the kingdom on the brink of chaos once more? One noble exclaimed in alarm. During the previous turmoil, we rallied under King Robert's banner to restore peace. If anyone seeks to incite discord now, they will find themselves opposed by all 7 kingdoms, Viscount Shailen said, tightening his grip on the sword's hilt. Ambitious individuals will inevitably reveal themselves. We need only to await the call of the Baratheons. Grey Stranglehold Island, as a vassal of House Baratheon, occupies a unique position. This medium-sized island had long been besieged by pirates, compelling its inhabitants to bear arms whenever they ventured outside, which severely impacted their safety and livelihood. One fateful day, House Baratheon's fleet was beset by pirates and subsequently struck by a storm, resulting in the destruction of their ships and the loss of many lives, including the Duke and Duchess of Wind's Rest. In response to this calamity, House Baratheon permitted Grey Stranglehold Island to autonomously bolster its military forces and collaborate with House Tarth of Tarth Island, establishing a line of defense against pirates. Every day, ships from both islands patrol the coastline of the Stormlands, combating piracy and safeguarding Wind's Rest. This unique autonomy in military expansion rendered Grey Stranglehold Island's forces more formidable compared to other lords of similar standing. The strategic resources provided by House Baratheon reassured the island's populace, alleviating their fears of pirate attacks. It is easy to imagine how grateful Lord Shailen Talon, the island's lord, felt towards House Baratheon. During this tumultuous era, aside from a portion of troops necessary for the island's defense, all other soldiers and knights, numbering over 400, were dispatched to participate in the War of the Usurper. That was a grand conflict aside from the brutal siege of Wind's Rest. It included the battles of Summerhall, the Battle of the Weeping Shore, and engagements with John Clinton at the King's Landing. Ultimately, only a little over 100 warriors returned to Grey Stranglehold Island. Robb Baratheon ascended to the Iron Throne, and as a staunch supporter of the Baratheon lineage and one of the victors of the Usurper's campaign, House Tarly experienced an elevation in their noble status, becoming a family of viscounts. However, Their gains were primarily in titles rather than in material wealth. King's Landing was first breached by the Lannisters of the Westerlands, who unleashed their forces to pillage, burn, and wreak havoc, leaving little in the way of riches. When the Allied forces finally arrived, they were met with nothing but a scene of utter devastation. Chapter 3. The Need for War. After the meeting concluded, Sharintalin leisurely made his way to the training grounds, where he discovered young Alan wielding a sword nearly his own height, striking with fervor and determination. Every movement was executed with utmost effort, and his bare torso revealed the emergence of budding muscles. His dark bangs, thoroughly damp, framed eyes that gleamed with resolve. Noticing the approach of another, Alan gradually lowered his wooden sword and glanced towards the newcomer, softly uttering, "Father, I have something to discuss with you." "Alan," Sharintalin's robust voice interrupted. "Take a moment to rest and accompany me to the study." He gestured towards Yaspereken, who promptly placed his arms across his chest and bowed respectfully. The study in Grey Stranglehold was situated on the upper level of the castle, serving as the Lord's private retreat and residence. This space was designated for the personal activities of the Tarlon family members, such as relaxation, reading, handling paperwork, and meeting guests, as well as hosting small-scale social gatherings. The study was designed for comfort, adorned with exquisite furniture and decor, and featured windows that showcased the Tarlon family status and taste. Upon entering the study, Alan found his father, the Viscount, seated at a desk by the window. The warm summer light streamed in, casting a gentle glow on the face of the middle-aged nobleman. A subtle smile graced his features upon seeing his eldest son, the lines on his face easing considerably. "Come, Alan, take a seat." "Very well, father," Alan replied, pulling a chair beside the desk and sitting down. His curiosity was piqued as he glanced at the papers laid before him. "Feel free to examine them," Sharintalin encouraged. "All right. This is a letter from Bachelor Ain regarding King's Landing, which he delivered this morning. Given the speed of the ravens, it is likely that the funeral for the hand of the king is currently underway. What is your perspective on this?" Sharintalin inquired slowly. Since the tragic loss of his wife and their newborn son, he had become accustomed to confiding in his eldest son, whom he held in high regard. Wishing to cultivate his capacity for political affairs in preparation for future stewardship of their domain. "The death of Lord Aelin may indeed be suspicious," Alan responded thoughtfully. "Indeed. This is another letter from our family as spies. Take a look." Alan took the missive, unfolding it to reveal a pale yellow sheet inscribed with ink from a quill. "Changes are afoot in King's Landing. The hand of the king is suspected to have been poisoned by the Lannisters. The king intends to summon Lord Eddard to assume the role of the new hand of the king." Though the letter contained only these 2 lines, the implications were exceedingly significant. In summary, war may be imminent. "Father, I sense that this situation is far from straightforward. We should prepare for war. Only with strength can we ensure our survival when chaos erupts across the continent." "Indeed, you are correct. The truth may no longer hold importance. What matters now is that, based on our extensive experience with warfare, the tranquility of this continent is likely to be disrupted once again." Lord Shailen spoke gravely. "Our King Rob is no longer the man he once was. Since ascending to the throne, he has indulged in excessive revelry, squandering resources and neglecting state affairs. Were it not for the Prime Minister's exceptional administrative prowess, our realm would likely have succumbed to the weight of a staggering fiscal deficit. It has been ages since Wind's Rest dispatched supplies to us, and we have been compelled to borrow from the Iron Vault to sustain our military forces. My father. Once Rob was a duke, but now he is but a Lannister. Wind's Rest has altered its policies toward us, and there is little we can do but rely on ourselves," Yalen remarked. "To Wind's Rest, our island is too distant from the mainland, even farther than Tarth. Rob is not the same. He was young when the old Duke and Duchess passed, and he harbors less animosity towards pirates. Perhaps we have been forsaken. For with Tarth providing protection, Wind's Rest feels secure enough not to expend resources combating piracy. Thus, my father, we must seek new avenues. Chaos may not be entirely unwelcome, otherwise we risk being crushed beneath the weight of our military expenditure. Perhaps a war is necessary," Yalen suggested. Lord Shailen was taken aback. He found his son's reasoning compelling. The conflict must be redirected. Since the great military buildup on Greyjoy's Island, its population had swelled rather than diminished, drawing numerous merchants seeking a secure trade environment amid formidable military might, establishing it as a vital supply hub between Westeros and Essos. This influx yielded considerable tax revenue. Yet even this could not withstand such military strain. At present, relinquishing our military is not an option. Otherwise, the island would once again face pirate raids, inciting a brutal wave of retribution. However, maintaining our forces would tighten our finances. With over 1,000 elite troops, our standing army rivals that of Dragonstone. It is worth noting that during the infamous Battle of Bastards in the original narrative, Jon faced 5,000 men with only 2,000 of his own. That will be all for today. You may return now. Whether we engage in war or not, we must discern our objectives and await the unfolding situation. You might visit Jon. He has been clamoring for your company, Lord Shailen concluded, satisfied with the discussion. Allowing his son to depart as he prepared to attend to his duties. Very well, father. I shall take my leave, Yaren responded, exiting the study. Instead of seeking out his brother, he retreated to his own chamber, where he contemplated how to unlock his latent abilities, for this was the source of his confidence in surviving this world. Chapter 4. The 5-second transition in Greyjoy's fortress. Within Yalen's chamber, our young master sat before the vanity, fraught with frustration. How can I absorb this special energy? He mused softly. He had resolved to refrain from reckless actions until he possessed sufficient strength, for the prospect of a permanent transition was no longer appealing. The 5-second transition, however, seemed quite enticing. The ability to select scenes with a guarantee of safety, though 5 seconds appears brief, offers ample opportunity for action. Yet, how could he truly absorb this energy? He pondered, gazing about the room in confusion. Suddenly, he found himself staring blankly at an oil lamp upon the table, pondering whether fire could indeed be considered a form of energy. After a moment of contemplation, he ignited the lamp. As he gazed at the flickering light, he cautiously extended his little finger. After all, once the crystal had merged with his being, it was nearly impossible to extract it. Yet, upon feeling the warmth of the flame, his finger hesitated. An intense inner conflict ensued. Oh, what a dilemma. After all, it was a rare treasure he had come across. It was impossible to let such an opportunity slip away. One could either revel in joy or descend into the depths of despair. After all, a living person could very well perish from holding back. Fear was of no consequence. Resolutely, he pressed forward. As he delved deeper, a vision of the crystal began to rotate slowly in his mind, emanating a soft blue glow. To his surprise, he felt no pain in his finger. It was akin to being submerged in warm water, enveloping him in a gentle embrace. An hour passed as the oil lamp burned down, and he noticed that the concentration of the blue light within the crystal had risen slightly from its original position, now settling at the base. At this rate, he surmised that it would take at least a month to fully charge. He recalled the 5-second traversal, requiring merely a fraction of energy, approximately 8 hours worth for a single journey. He resolved that he would not sleep tonight. He must attempt the traversal. Thus, he continued to replenish his energy relentlessly. Finally, in the stillness of the night, he sensed that he had amassed sufficient energy. A low, eerie chuckle echoed through his room. During this period of charging, he had already contemplated his destination. He swiftly ruled out various realms of fantasy. 5 seconds would be ample time to be overwhelmed by the powers of those adept in the arcane arts. Moreover, he sought a world of fortuitous opportunities, one that posed no danger. Certainly, realms involving celestial peaches or elixirs of immortality were out of the question. Regardless of whether he could acquire them from the hands of deities, as a mere mortal, he remained oblivious to the potential repercussions of consuming such items. This was a gamble he could only afford to take once in a lifetime. He dared not risk it. His exposure to entertainment was limited, and he was hesitant to pursue any worlds that offered opportunities, fearing dire consequences. Thus, he resolved to first venture into a realm friendly to ordinary individuals. Most importantly, it must not pose any threat to him. He had decided upon a specific time period within the Pokemon world. In a vast and desolate laboratory, an elderly man with pale hair and a square face gazed helplessly at a boy beside him, who donned pajamas and clutched an empty Pokeball. This item has already been claimed by someone who was not tardy, he remarked. Ash, filled with disappointment, stared at the void within the Pokeball. I suppose I was wrong. I shouldn't have been late, he murmured, turning his attention to another Pokeball. Very well, I will choose Bulbasaur. You shall be my Pokemon. Professor Oak rolled his eyes, responding, that was also taken by the punctual individual. Ah, Ash sighed, struggling to conceal his dismay, as he picked up the last remaining Pokeball. Charmander, you are the Pokemon I have personally selected. How could this be? Ash stood in shock, staring at the empty Pokeball. Professor Oak, stroking his chin and squinting, commented, arriving late is akin to selecting a Pokemon. A mere second can alter one's destiny. Upon hearing this, Ash looked pitifully at Professor Oak. Does this mean I must embark on my journey empty-handed? Professor Oak hesitated, considering Ash's plight. There is still one more available, but before he could finish, Ash eagerly interrupted, I'll take that one. Upon his words, Professor Oak activated the central teleportation system, causing a Pokeball to slowly levitate. Just then, a hand swiftly seized the Pokeball. I'll take it. I'm out of here. Who are you? Professor Oak exclaimed. attempting to halt the shadowy figure, only to find that it had vanished without a trace. Ash stood frozen in place, while Professor Oak regained his composure first, stating, "Your journey may need to be postponed. Do not worry, I will contact Miss Junshaw shortly. We will surely apprehend him. For now, wait at home for further notice." Ash nodded vacantly, turned, and ran out of the laboratory in tears. Meanwhile, at the same washstand, a flash of white light revealed a small yellow figure standing atop it. Blinking and surveying its surroundings, it let out an adorable Pikachu. Chapter 5, Training Pikachu and the Malice of Neighbors gazing at the large electric mouse before him. Yaren felt immense satisfaction. This was the divine Pikachu. He had previously devised a strategy, knowing that energy attacks would have no effect on it. Instead, they would transform into shimmering progress bars of time-space crystals. As for Pikachu, aside from the Iron Tail and Volt Tackle it would learn later, it had yet to master any physical combat techniques during this initial phase of its journey. Before him stood a mere Karami, posing no threat whatsoever. With these thoughts in mind, Yaren extended his wicked hands toward Pikachu's adorable cheeks, playfully poking at its electric pouch. Pika, Pika, Pikachu. In an instant, sparks of yellow electricity danced around them. Ah, my clothes. After a flurry of frantic movements, Yaren's white outfit had turned to charred black. Pikachu ceased its attack, tilting its head disdainfully at him, then curiously uttered, "Pika, Pika, where is the strange room? I dislike humans." Through experimentation, Yaren discovered that Pikachu indeed felt no pain from energy attacks. Rather, it was quite comfortable. The progress bar increased imperceptibly, much like basking by a warm fire. Certainly, he also discovered that if he endured excessive energy attacks, his clothing could not withstand the dissipation of energy, and he would have to resort to summoning the river crab deity, like Daenerys Targaryen hatching her dragons. "Hello, Pikachu. I am Arlen Taran, and from now on, we shall be companions, so please guide me well," Arlen said as he lifted Pikachu into his arms. "Pika? What? Pika Pika. You don't think I am unaware of this, do you? I was brought here against my will. Indeed, we are partners, and let us forge the strongest bond," Arlen joyfully proclaimed. Regrettably, misunderstanding Pikachu's meaning, Arlen rejoiced too soon. A flash of electricity surged forth, lasting several minutes, and Arlen's clothing succumbed to the strain, reduced to ashes. He stood there, transfixed by the diminutive creature, which seemed weary from its electric exertions. With a yawn, it ambled over to the Pokeball, daintily tapping the switch with its plump little foot, disappearing inside. Arlen, too, was fatigued, without the need to change. He simply collapsed onto the bed and fell into a deep slumber. In the following days, Arlen did not hasten to traverse realms, instead focusing on accumulating progress. Unsurprisingly, Pikachu was the primary contributor to this endeavor. The entirety of Grayscale Fortress was aware that Arlen had captured a plump yellow mouse capable of unleashing electrifying attacks. A certain lord who had been struck by its power remarked that the sensation was both tingling and exhilarating, even more stimulating than a visit to a brothel, albeit occasionally accompanied by smoke emanating from the mouth and convulsions upon impact. Through a series of apple offerings, Arlen finally endeared Pikachu to him. Its rotundity was not without reason. The day after acquiring Pikachu, Arlen ventured into the dungeon to conduct electric shock experiments on death row inmates. He discovered that the current Pikachu could not kill, merely causing temporary paralysis at most. The effectiveness waned against stronger individuals, with the paralysis lasting a mere minute and a half at best. For Arlen, this was ample, as he only needed a fleeting moment of incapacitation to seize opportunities during his brief 5-second crossings. Consequently, his training regimen for Pikachu was straightforward: unleash electric attacks on all in their vicinity, aiming for efficiency in their thefts. He envisioned that their dynamic duo, the Pikachu-Arlen combination, would surely resonate throughout the worlds. As Arlen was training Pikachu in the martial arts square, a servant clad in light gray approached, bowing respectfully before saying, "Young Master Arlen, the Lord requests your presence in the council hall to discuss matters. All the noble knights are already there." From the servant's latter statement, Arlen understood he needed to dress more formally, as his current attire of white was overly casual. Yet, there was little he could do about it. The seasons in Westeros, unlike those of his previous life, were peculiar. Summers and winters here could stretch on for several years. On the southern-leaning Greyscale Isle, the summer temperatures were particularly oppressive. When Yaren arrived at the Parliament Hall, he was already adorned in a noble's jacket, his feet encased in genuine leather knee-high boots, and he held the hilt of a grand sword wrapped in leather. He took his seat beside Viscount Shailen, while Pikachu, with its tiny hands, adorably rested on the conference table, gazing at the incoming nobles. Bachelor Ein stood on the other side of the Lord, flanked by a battalion of the garrison, each comprising 100 men, with all 10 captains present. The Sikh Sea Knights numbered 300, organized into groups of 100, with 2 captains already on site and 1 still en route. Additionally, there were 50 blue-robed officers led by Knight Riamandel, the Baron of Guzhage who managed maritime trade, and Baron Cyril P.S., the trade tax officer. Noticing the assembly was complete, Bachelorine quietly alerted Lord Viscount Shailen that they could commence. Lord Viscount Shailen surveyed the room, his gaze sweeping across each face, before addressing the assembly. The purpose of today's gathering is to inform you of a significant event. Our neighbor, Tars Island, has issued a challenge. Baron Guzhage, please elaborate on the situation. Upon hearing this, Guzhage rose, his plump face wrinkled in concern. Our trade caravan, which was transporting grain from the river bay, has gone missing while returning from Tars Island. Crows have relayed reports that our caravan was intercepted by Count Selwyn and was taken to the Hall of Dusk. At this revelation, the members of the assembly exchanged glances, and Yalen felt a twinge of surprise. It was known that Count Selwyn of Tars was portrayed positively in the original narrative, characterized as a man of chivalry and referred to as the Star of Dusk. Moreover, his daughter, Brenitas, played a significant role in the original tale, shining in various battles and exemplifying true knightly virtues. Chapter 6. Crisis and Speculation. Lord Tranda, please give the order. I shall lead my men to rescue the caravan. One of the garrison captains declared indignantly. That would be unwise. Rash military action would only play into their hands. They merely invited our caravan as guests in the name of Count Tars. We must not act impulsively, Baron Cyril P.S. replied sternly. Yet this caravan was carrying provisions, our military supplies. Tars Island's grain production is insufficient. We rely on this to sustain our troops. If other lords follow suit, our army will be rendered impotent. Knight Riamandel's words struck at the heart of the matter. Lord Shailen regarded them thoughtfully, acknowledging the validity of their concerns. Then, let us devise a solution to this predicament. The assembly members bowed their heads in contemplation. To engage in battle might provoke the ire of the Blue Siren of Wind Whisper Castle, yet to remain passive would inevitably lead to the collapse of their military. Inviting the attention of pirates, Yalen too pondered deeply. The Tranda family in the original tale had not exhibited such formidable military prowess, merely noted as vassals of Wind Whisper Castle. However, the current Grey Scourge Island, once a stronghold during the Blood Dragon Rampage, had now become the domain of the Tranda family. Could this impending crisis ultimately lead to the weakening or even the demise of the Tranda family's power? Father, do you believe it is possible that this crisis originates from Windwhisper Fortress? Eileen gazed intently at Viscount Shailen, his tone measured yet laden with implications that sent ripples of shock through the assembled nobles in the hall. Indeed, Windwhisper Fortress's Lord Blue had long ceased military funding for Greyshroud Isle. Now, if the military forces of Greyshroud Isle sought to unify the Stepstone Archipelago, it would not be an unattainable ambition. Perhaps Windwhisper Fortress has discerned this and harbors a reluctance to witness the emergence of a kingdom on the Stepstone Archipelago reminiscent of the once mighty kingdom of the Three Daughters. This may very well be the root of our current predicament. Reflecting on this, esteemed lords, I surmise that in the eyes of our counterparts at Windwhisper Fortress, we have advanced too swiftly. They have begun to fear our burgeoning strength, which eludes their control. Eileen broke the silence, his voice cutting through the tension. Feel free to share your thoughts, Viscount Shailen encouraged. The behavior of Windwhisper Fortress stems from their belief that our power has grown excessively large, and thus we are capable of various actions. Instantly, the hall was filled with the sound of cacophonous laughter, with Pikachu sprawled across the table, exclaiming, "Humans are so strange." Legend has it that the Stepstone Archipelago was once part of Dorne's arm, connecting Westeros and Essos. When the first men invaded Westeros via the land bridge, the Children of the Forest, led by the Green Seers, unleashed formidable magic to shatter Dorne's arm, thereby forming the Stepstone Archipelago. Consequently, the archipelago lies between the Broken Arm and the disputed lands. During the 1st century of the Targaryen dynasty, the Stepstone Archipelago was merely a den for pirates, becoming a persistent nuisance to the Seven Kingdoms, with the rainforest-covered Storm's End being their favored target for plunder. Although the Iron Throne once dispatched fleets to eradicate them, the issue remained a lingering affliction. The free city-states of Myr, Lys, and Tyrosh frequently clashed over the sovereignty of the Stepstone Archipelago. After the formation of the Kingdom of the Three Daughters, these islands were annexed, and the pirates were driven away. However, it did not take long for the naval forces of the Three Daughters to become even worse than the pirates. They imposed exorbitant tolls and abducted women and boys to sell into brothels. Historically, the Seven Kingdoms have also been embroiled in conflicts. During the reign of King Viserys I Targaryen, his brother Daemon allied with House Valerion to form a mercenary force that invaded the Stepstone Archipelago. defeating the crab feeder and crowning himself as the king of the Narrow Sea and the Stepstone Archipelago. The Kingdom of the Three Daughters formed an alliance with Dorne to counter Daemon, who relinquished the throne in the year 115. The Kingdom of the Stepstones ultimately fell after enduring 5 more monarchs. During the reign of King Jaehaerys II Targaryen, the last member of House Blackfire, Commander Maerys Blackfire, invaded the Stepstone Archipelago but was defeated and killed by the Iron Throne's expeditionary forces, thereby quelling the threat posed by the Blackfire pretenders and returning the archipelago to its original state. Only a small noble family known as the Tran family remained. Originally from the Stormlands, situated between the Bone Road and Summerhall, due to the fierce combat prowess exhibited by Aerys Sterling and Acarys Sterling, coupled with their merciless treatment of pirates, the enemies who fall into their grasp often meet a grim fate, typically ending up hanged. In the eyes of these marauders, their conduct mirrors that of their own kind. Consequently, the Iron Throne has mandated that the Baratheons of Storm's End remain stationed on Grey Gallows Island, serving as a bulwark against piracy and ensuring the safety of trade between the 2 continents. The Torture Deep of the Stairs Islands ranks 3rd in land area among the archipelago. The island boasts fertile soil, which pirates have exploited by seizing numerous slaves to cultivate the land. On the western side of the island lies a natural deep-water bay, a sheltered harbor that has gradually evolved into a gathering point for pirates to resupply. Naturally, in places teeming with people, social hierarchies emerge, and the pirate community is no exception. This island is jointly ruled by 3 of the most notorious pirate captains, Yaren and Mulla, a robust black man clad in an open black shirt adorned with golden trinkets, Cask Bowers, tall and lean with long dreadlocks framing his piercing gaze that betrays cunning and cruelty, and Nyrel Vishui, distinct from the others, dressed in an aristocratic waistcoat and knee-high leather boots. Slender of build with a shock of red hair and gray-brown eyes, his aristocratic demeanor accentuated by a double chin. Today, they convene at Nyrel Vishui's grand private pool, attended by various beautiful women offering fruit platters and fine wines, while others provide soothing massages. The trio recline in the water, embracing one another, when a man clad in black rushes in, swiftly bowing before the sumptuous scene. "My lords, urgent news from our spies," he declares. "Leave us." Nyrel Vishui gestures dismissively to those present. Once only the 4 remain, the newcomer reveals intelligence from Grey Gallows Island. All their forces have retreated within, and rumors circulate of an assassination attempt on Charlentland. It is reported that the assassin has already ascended the gallows while Lord Charlent lies bedridden and incapacitated. Is this information credible? Which faction could penetrate so many guards to harm Lord Tarlon, and to what end? Could there be a conspiracy at play? Cask Bowers murmurs quietly. "Oh, Bowers, you cannot possibly be cowed by Tarlon. Many on the Stairs Islands desire his demise. Had it not been for them these past years, we could have completely intercepted trade routes between the 2 continents and even launched assaults on Storm's End, amassing considerable wealth," Nyrel Vishui retorts. "Enough, Nyrel Vishui. Overthinking can be beneficial. But only you, the greedy and ignorant Sadaga of Crab Island, would be so foolish. Without your family, you would never have gained a foothold here, and one day, your crab-like intellect will lead to your downfall." Yaren Mulla scoffs disdainfully at Nyrel Vishui. "Enough. I sense treachery afoot. We must adopt a stance of watchful waiting," Cask Bowers asserts, his eyes flashing with the shrewdness of an old pirate. "Cask, you are indeed timid. Based on my understanding of the nobility in the Stormlands, aside from this madman Tran, the rest are merely spineless cowards. We have previously amassed tremendous wealth with relative ease, as long as we could circumvent Tran. What if he cuts off our retreat via the Nyrelvi waterway? If they intercept us after we assault the Windfury Cape, it would be a catastrophe for both sides." "Foolish Nyrel, has your mind truly been devoured by crabs?" Hayleiden Muller remarked, observing Nyrel without a hint of hesitation. "I concur with Nyrel," Cask Bowers said heavily. "Why, Cask? I had thought your intellect sufficient, at least surpassing that of Nyrel," Hayleiden Muller replied. "Because the day before yesterday, I received confidential reports indicating that the Taz family has intercepted the Tran family's convoy. They may not be as united as we presumed. Perhaps this time, Tran wishes to share a feast with us," Cask Bowers said, a wicked grin spreading across his face, his eyes gleaming with schadenfreude. Chapter 7. The Ambush and the Meeting. Windfury Cape is a substantial peninsula extending from the Stormlands into the Narrow Sea. It borders the Shipwreck Bay to the north and the Dornish Sea to the south, facing the Isle of Isman across the waters. The peninsula is characterized by a rainy climate and fertile lands, with fields that often yield bountiful harvests, making it a primary granary for Windrest Castle, a region of utmost importance to successive lords of the Stormlands. On the northern coast of Windfury Cape, deep into the night, 3 unflagged medium-sized sailing ships, leading over a dozen smaller vessels, drew ever closer to the shore until they reached the shallows, where they anchored and deployed their gangplanks. Men clad in tattered garments, wielding spears and bearing crossbows, leapt from the gangplanks and hurriedly charged towards Rainhouse City. At that moment, the city gates were tightly shut, and the guards atop the walls were lulled into slumber, their vigilance long since eroded by years of peace. No one anticipated the return of pirates that had not graced the castle in years. As the night air was pierced by the clanging of iron hooks on the walls, the guards awoke from their stupor, but it was too late. The pirates had already begun their ascent. When the guards peered over the walls to investigate, a barrage of powerful arrows soared towards them, slicing through the air. Some of the defenders fell before they even realized the danger. Seven hells. Tell me this isn't real. A soldier of the garrison exclaimed in a panic, his voice trembling with fear. A bolt pierced through his chest, blood streaming down the shaft, leaving his face ashen, his pupils dilating as life ebbed away. When Count Caspar Wilde received word of the breach, he was too stunned to react. He swiftly organized a force comprised of knights and their squires and dashed towards the walls. Thus, as dawn broke over the ramparts, blood stained the stones, and Count Caspar Wilde was bound and dragged by the pirates to the center of the square. Before the despairing eyes of the townsfolk, he was simultaneously pierced by dozens of spears, and blood gushed forth, soaking the square. Why did you kill him? Nirelvi's voice trembled with astonishment as Cask Bowers cast a glance at him, revealing a sinister depth in his gaze. He spoke slowly. Their defiances claimed far too many lives among us. The losses our army has suffered are immense, and we must instill fear in the other nobles and the populace. Otherwise, we shall find ourselves in peril. Thus, none dared to impede the reckless abandon of these pirates, who ravaged, burned, and pillaged without remorse. No one was left to resist. The cries and screams from the city of Rainhouse echoed relentlessly for an entire day. Within the city, every treasure and gold dragon was hastily loaded onto great ships, and even the provisions uncovered during the search were taken away as much as possible. What could not be transported was set ablaze. As the pirates departed, they torched the fields surrounding Rainhouse Fortress, leaving nothing but ashes in their wake. Windrest Fortress, one of the most formidable castles among the Seven Kingdoms, served as the ancestral seat of House Baratheon. For millennia prior, it had been the throne of the ancient Storm Kings. The castle was said to be safeguarded by spells woven into its walls, preventing magic from penetrating them. At this moment, within the grand and opulently adorned hall of Windrest Fortress, an elderly man with a weathered visage and a shovel-like red beard occupied the seat of honor. The nobles assembled beneath him bore grave expressions, fidgeting in discomfort. As the acting lord, the pirates must pay for their transgressions against Rainhouse. This is an affront to House Baratheon. We must report to Lord Renly and beseech him to send forces to bring these criminals to justice and avenge us," declared Sir John Wilder, a member of the Wilder family serving at Windrest, his fury palpable as the pirates had attacked their ancestral home. Cothane Ponkos regarded him with a furrowed brow, pondering for a moment before responding. "I took action the moment I received word this morning. The crow's message should reach King's Landing in a couple of days." "Thank you, Sir Cothane," John Wilder replied, his anger somewhat quelled. The pirates' atrocities were indeed infuriating. But the inaction of House Tran of Greyjoy Island, who were supposed to fend off the pirates and relay intelligence, was even more exasperating. If this continued, we would once again find ourselves exposed to the pirates' fangs. An impassioned voice rose from Lord Whitehead of Weeping Town. "I have received news that Lord Shailen of the Trelane family is bedridden, attended by his eldest son. The forces originally dispatched to scout for pirates have all been recalled, gathered on the island to protect Lord Yaren Trelane from misfortune." A well-informed knight interjected, "We recently intercepted one of their caravans, and they were met with assassination. By the Seven, is there a more ludicrous spectacle than this?" A nobleman from Crow's Nest remarked, seemingly grasping the truth. Whether the assassination was genuine or fabricated mattered little. Our foremost concern remained the recovery of their caravan. By the Seven Hells, these detestable pirates will not care whether the assassination is real or not. Cothane's red beard bristled as he slammed his palm upon the table, resolutely declaring, "Let each house send provisions alongside the caravan's return, demanding that they punish the culprits once Lord Renly's message arrives in King's Landing." Indeed, the subordinates responded in unison below. Count Tars, the acting lord of the city, cast his gaze downward once more. "Yes, my Lord Selwyn Tars, ensure that each house gathers a contingent of troops, prepares supplies, and sends them to Tars Island, ready to be led by Count Selwyn." The voices from below echoed again, though the intensity of their responses varied. To the lords situated farther from the coast, this endeavor seemed thankless, especially considering the limited efforts displayed by these coastal lords against the incursions of Dorne. Among the lords below, only Sir Roland Trelane from the city of Lost Grey bore an inscrutable expression. Chapter 8. the Trelanes, and the counteroffensive Sir Roland Trelane. The head of the Trelane family in Lost Grey had long been a staunch supporter of House Baratheon, guarding the vital routes between the Boneway and the Hall of Summer against Dorne's attacks. The most renowned member of this family is Marlon Trelane, who resides in King's Landing and possesses exceptional martial skills, serving as the Kingsguard to Robert Baratheon. The Trelane families are of the same lineage. To preserve their rare bond, they exchange progeny annually to visit one another's domains. However, the younger generation of the Trelane family in Lost Grey, akin in age to Marlon, perished during the War of the Usurper, specifically in the Battle of the Bells, leaving only Marlon alive. For reasons unknown to Robert, he appointed Marlon to the Kingsguard, who, being young at the time, readily accepted. The Kingsguard does not hold lands, marry, or bear children, remaining solely loyal to their sovereign. Thus, this branch of the Trelane family is effectively extinct. Upon learning of the birth of Viscount Shaelin's child, John Trelane, Sir Roland was overjoyed. Yet, he understood that it was not the appropriate time to approach Viscount Shaelin, who had recently lost his wife. After 5 years of patience, he finally sought out Viscount Shaelin on the occasion of John's 5th birthday. After expressing his intentions, Viscount Trelane readily agreed, promising that when John turns 8, he would travel to Lost Grey to assume his role as the heir of this Trelane line. Now, John is 7 years old, and the promised time draws near, prompting Viscount Shaelin to cherish the limited moments he has left with him. On the Isle of Grey, in the Plaza of Grey Strands, a force of over 1,200 men gathered, with 1,000 more behind them. Clad in chainmail and half-helmets, they wielded iron spears and carried crossbows, their feet shod in leather boots. In front of them stood 50 men adorned in blue robes and chainmail, the latter made of interlinked metal rings. Wielding deep blue shields and wearing metal half-helmets, their arms protected by armor extending to their wrists. At the forefront stood Knight Rymander and 13 captains, donned in full armor typically reserved for tournaments, brandishing steel longswords. Upon the elevated platform, Shaelin Toulon sat in a wheelchair, surveying the elite force he had meticulously cultivated over the years, nodding in satisfaction. He raised his voice and proclaimed, "Esteemed colleagues, I trust you have all received the news. Not long ago, I was assailed by an assassin, and my wounds remain unhealed. The pirates seized this moment of our gathering, when we were most vulnerable, to launch an attack on one of the noble estates of our revered King Robert Baratheon, Wind's Fury Point. They ravaged and plundered, departing with impunity. Their malevolence knows no bounds, and even the gods cannot tolerate their actions. They all deserve to descend into the depths of hell. The noble lords of Wind's Fury Point have finally resolved to offer their resources and support, beseeching us to join them in combating the pirates. This is a tremendous opportunity, for we shall fight for justice and peace. As you can see, my legs, rendered feeble by that accursed assassin, prevent me from leading you into battle. Therefore, I shall entrust my son and sole heir, Yaren Toulon, to represent me alongside you as we embark on our campaign against the pirate islands to vanquish the archvillain." Emerging from the side of the platform, Yaren Toulon stepped forth with measured grace. Though merely 10 years of age, he stood at an impressive height of 1.60 meters. Draped in a blue cloak, his form encased in black armor, and adorned with an intricate steel helmet that concealed all but his piercing eyes. He moved with a commanding presence. Beside him, Pikachu, clad in a manner reminiscent of a tin can, diligently matched his stride. The decision to send Yaren into battle was one he had earnestly requested. As a pivotal component of this plan, to assuage any discontent from Robert and to bolster the morale of the soldiers on the island, Lord Shaelin, despite his injuries, could not partake in the conflict. In the eyes of the populace on Grey Gallows Island, Robert Baratheon was the hero who liberated them from the torment of the pirates. In their hearts, the Toulon family held the foremost position, with Robert occupying a close second. While they might disregard Renly, they could never overlook Robert. Initially, Lord Shaelin and the other dignitaries were opposed to this course of action, yet in the blink of an eye, Yaren and Pikachu vanished, leaving them momentarily astonished. Mere moments later, they returned, with Yaren clutching 2 smoking snakes. With a gleeful smile amidst the astonished gazes, Yaren exclaimed, "Ha ha ha. Tonight, we shall feast upon snake gall and enjoy a sumptuous snake broth." Lord Shaelin and his compatriots had braced themselves for such antics. After all, Pikachu had displayed remarkable magical prowess previously. This world was inherently divine, and certain powers defied ordinary rationale. Just prior, Yaren had ventured into the realm of the legend of the Condor heroes, arriving near the secluded valley of the formidable Dugachobai, where he beheld a gigantic eagle, nearly human-sized, fanning its immense wings, disorienting several crimson snakes in its vicinity. Observing this, Yaren commanded, "Release," and Pikachu unleashed a surge of electricity. targeting both the great eagle and the snakes. However, the eagle merely tilted its head in confusion. Unperturbed, Yaren seized the moment, declaring, "Come here, you." The majestic eagle was poised to thwart this mysterious human intruder when, just as its wings unfurled halfway, the individual suddenly vanished, leaving nothing in their wake. The eagle, bewildered, clasped its head with its wings, frantically massaging the fleshy orb atop its cranium. It had never encountered such a remarkable being before, and now it found itself questioning whether this truly was a human. As for Pikachu, I cannot ascertain its humanity, but I am certain that creature exhibits quite unhuman traits. Eileen's display, while astonishing to Shaylin Towand and his companions, did not incite panic, for they had previously verified the authenticity of Pikachu as one of their own species. Eileen explained that his powers stemmed from the blessings of the seven gods, enabling him to teleport to other realms. This was akin to activating a 5-second invincibility cheat. After a significant accumulation of energy over time, he was now prepared for battle. Returning to the present, Eileen stood upon the elevated platform. Gazing at the multitude of diverse eyes before him, his heart ablaze with fervor. He spoke, his youthful voice resonating across the square. "Warriors, we are the Grey Strikers. No one detests pirates more than we do. No one understands them better. They once pillaged our wealth in our moments of weakness, violated our wives and daughters, and slaughtered our brethren. Their malevolence stains our entire island, the blood of the victims flowing into every corner. They are not but a horde of marauders, devoid of production. A band of scoundrels and miscreants. Now that we have grown strong, now that we possess the might to seek vengeance, we shall raise our blades to their throats, thrust our spears through their chests, and unleash their vile blood to cleanse the souls of the wronged." Eileen gestured towards Pikachu, who complied by releasing a dazzling bolt of lightning, the thunder rumbling across the battlefield. "In this battle, the seven gods shall forsake them, and the seven gods shall bless us. We shall send them to the depths of hell, to suffer eternally. Thus, we march to war." With his sword raised high, Eileen's declaration ignited a fervent cheer from the crowd, the resounding cry of "To battle! To battle!" piercing the heavens. Chapter 9. The war commences upon receiving the letter from Kotanai Polos, the acting lord of Windrest Fortress, in King's Landing. Lannister astutely reported the matter to Robert. After all, the Seven Kingdoms belong to the king, and a declaration of war against the pirates of the Stepstone Islands, a matter of such magnitude, required Robert's consent. Although Lannister often behaved frivolously, he understood the gravity of warfare and dared not act recklessly. The progression of war is inherently unpredictable. The Stepstone Islands are situated near the three great free cities and contested territories, making it a highly sensitive area. Should the situation escalate to an irreparable state, he would find it exceedingly difficult to justify his actions to Robert. Upon learning the contents of the letter, Rob could scarcely contain his fury. Akin to a wild boar deprived of its tusks, panting heavily and gritting his teeth. Incompetent, utterly incompetent. How could Rainhouse Castle be so easily breached? Did they regard the walls as mere decorations? This band of pirates must be eradicated. I entrust this task to you. Rally the Lords of Storms in to assemble an army. I shall make those wretched beasts aware that anyone who dares to sack a city and slay our subjects in Storm's End will face retribution. Even if the forsaken seven gods turn a blind eye. By the gods, were it not for the plans already set for the north, I would personally crush their skulls. Inform our Sir John Velland that to inherit Rainhouse Castle, he must achieve sufficient military merit to atone for his family's grievous loss of the city. At this moment, Lord Lancel, watching in trepidation, dared not delay and hastily penned a reply to the acting lord, conveying the king's words. Tarth Island is a place of exquisite beauty, adorned with mountains, lakes, and waterfalls, featuring highland pastures and shadowy valleys. Due to the nearby Azure Sea, Tarth Island is often referred to as the Sapphire Isle. However, at this time, the western shore of Tarth Island bore no semblance of sapphire. An array of ships and war vessels were anchored here, their sizes varying, but all proudly displaying different banners. Some of these warships were commandeered fishing boats, while others had been rented from merchant fleets by the nobles of Storm's End. The noble lords were well aware that bloodshed was inevitable, and none wished to become the next Velland. A coalition force, hastily assembled by the nobles, exceeded 2,000 in number, equipped with a myriad of weapons and armor, each cohort bearing its own distinctive banner. Before them stood a middle-aged knight, Sir John Velland, appointed as the vanguard of this noble coalition. As no noble lord or heir was present among the ranks, the Earl of Tarth, advanced in years, could no longer lead the charge. However, as the Lord of Tarth Island, his experience in warfare against pirates was invaluable. Thus, he would serve as the commander, focusing on logistics and the overarching strategy of the conflict. He had already made arrangements with the Trant family of Grigard Isle, whose fleet would sail to the Torture Abyss to launch a direct assault on Torture Bay. The Tran family would then divert their forces northward to engage Bloodstone Isle, awaiting the coalition's clearance of the three major pirate factions before providing further support. Yaren Tran stood upon the soil of Bloodstone Isle. Blood sprang from the neck of a fallen pirate captain beside him, the head of the pirate rolling to the ground as the captain's grip on his broken sword gradually loosened. The pirate captain, until his final breath, could not comprehend how this seemingly diminutive youth possessed such strength. The battle concluded in an instant, and the surrounding pirates, witnessing this, promptly cast down their weapons and surrender. Since consuming the gallbladder of two bosque serpents, Yalen's strength has surged remarkably, allowing his still-developing 10-year-old physique to wield power comparable to that of a seasoned knight. The recent skirmish was merely another instance of the ongoing conflict that has plagued the region since Yaren led the majority of the soldiers from Greyshield Island to this, 2 days prior. The relentless pirate assaults have continued unabated, often striking under the cover of night or at dawn. The master of Bloodstone Island is a merchant named Memelord from Tyros. In recent years, he has engaged in smuggling across the two continents, encompassing various illicit trades, including but not limited to human trafficking, which has led to his rapid ascendance. He frequently invests considerable sums to procure a vast array of crossbow weaponry from the free city of Tyros and has hired numerous mercenary bands. Consequently, his power is formidable. Albeit fragmented, the pirate leader Yaren recently dispatched belonged to one of his hired factions. After 2 days of combat, Yaren felt no need to await reinforcements. The disparity in weaponry rendered such assistance unnecessary. They could engage an overwhelming force, for no faction on Bloodstone Island could withstand them. Memelord, true to his merchant's nature, remained concealed, exercising caution. Most critically, this cunning individual continued to orchestrate ambushes with his soldiers, and capturing Memelord was imperative to swiftly seize Bloodstone Island. Yaren mused that this endeavor was not merely for Memelord's gain. After 2 days of honing his lethal skills, he felt adept at taking lives. Yet searching for a concealed local power on such an expansive island seemed akin to chasing phantoms. Resolving to abandon contemplation, he decided to assault Bloodstone City at dawn the following day, willing to forsake the ships and salvage whatever supplies he could. The next day, as the citizens of Bloodstone City sought to exit through the gates, they discovered them firmly shut, barricaded by a massive wooden post. Outside, a synchronized march approached, each soldier clad in formidable armor. Behind them, colossal trebuchets were being maneuvered into position by numerous soldiers until they halted at an optimal range. These trebuchets, modified by Yaren, boasted significantly enhanced performance in every aspect, eliminating the previous delays in loading and firing, while also requiring less effort. Standing at the forefront of his troops, Yaren nonchalantly waved his hand, prompting the four machines to unleash their fury simultaneously. For enormous fireballs soared through the morning mist, bypassing the city's defenses to strike the structures within. Instantly, cries of terror, pleas for mercy, and wails of despair echoed from the city, as various shops were consumed by random flames and destruction. The bombardment continued relentlessly for an hour. At that moment, a man clad in merchant garb ascended the city walls and called out, "Your Excellency of the Tran family, Master Memelord wishes to negotiate with you. Please cease your assault." Upon hearing this shrill plea, Yaren gestured for the trebuchets to finally halt their malevolent onslaught. With a creaking sound, the gates of Bloodstone City slowly opened. A group of exquisitely adorned, beautiful women emerged gracefully from either side of the gate. Some possessed dusky skin, while others were as fair as snow. However, it was undeniable that they were all strikingly attractive. Dressed in a variety of traditional garments, they formed two elongated lines, bowing slightly as their perfectly synchronized arms extended towards the gates in a gesture of invitation. Recently, Yaren had been ambushed multiple times by the treacherous Malays Sane, and it was hard to believe that there was no ulterior motive at play. Yaren remained untempted, boldly shouting for Malays Sane to come out and face him. Otherwise, he would not cease his efforts until the gates were breached. Chapter 10. The Fall of Bloodstone City. On the battlefield before Bloodstone City, upon hearing Yalen's threatening words, the puppet master behind the scenes realized that Yaren was unfazed and their scheme had failed, prompting them to summon all the beautiful women back into the city. Yaren was not in a hurry. He ordered the catapults to be prepared, surrounding the city without attacking, for he sought to wage a battle of wits, waiting for changes within the fortress. As anticipated, the wealthy merchants and high-ranking officials within the city were as restless as ants on a hot pan. In the central council hall of Bloodstone City, a slave trader from Tylossi was frantically pacing, exclaiming in exasperation, "We can no longer allow them to attack. My shops and slaves have already suffered tremendous losses. By the three gods above, where can we find that damned Malays Sane?" Clearly, the upper echelons managing Bloodstone City could not locate Malays, but Yaren remained oblivious to this fact. His head was steaming, and saliva flew as he spoke again. That scoundrel of the Traelon family has not fallen for our ruse. I believe we must take action to minimize our losses. The city lord has hidden away, taking half the army with him. Our resistance is futile. We might as well speak the truth and send envoys to negotiate. A local merchant leader from Bloodstone Island said weakly. Upon hearing this, the merchant's eyes brightened. There was indeed a point to be made. Bloodstone City had 4 gates, allowing for a potential escape, yet these merchants and some pirate mercenaries with tangible businesses could not bear to abandon their riches and chose to hold their ground. However, their lord, Malay Sane, had voluntarily abandoned the city's assets and fled, issuing one final command to hold Bloodstone City at all costs. Initially, they complied, but as time passed, they increasingly sensed something amiss. If the Traelon family could spare their industries in Bloodstone City, then who was truly in command? Absolutely not. One of the pirate leaders exclaimed furiously. The Traelon family is notoriously hostile towards pirates. If we surrender, we will certainly be hanged. If you wish to see us dead, we will flee, and none of you shall find peace. The mercenaries and merchants exchanged glances, their faces betraying discontent, yet they found themselves powerless. Indeed, if the pirates were to flee, they would lose their right to negotiate. Lacking sufficient military strength, how could they ensure the preservation of their enterprises? At that moment, a servant clad in gray rushed into the hall, his demeanor frantic as he knelt before a slave trader, proclaiming, "My lord, our dispatch slaves have uncovered a piece of information. They have seen Miles Sane in the 6th passage of the Bloodstone Cavern." Upon hearing this, the slave trader slammed his hand on the table, his voice charged with fervor. "Esteemed colleagues, this is indeed fortuitous news. If we can aid the Traelon family in conquering the Bloodstone Cavern, our enterprises may yet be safeguarded." A palpable silence enveloped the room as all were taken aback by the revelation. The pirates exchanged fiery glances with the mercenaries and merchants, locking eyes in a tense standoff. A mercenary leader, understanding the gravity of the situation, pondered aloud, "This may be worth attempting. Though the Traelon family is ruthless towards their enemies, they reward those who assist them with unwavering loyalty. Are pirates included in that?" A pirate leader interjected swiftly. Once again, a familiar silence descended. The mercenary who had spoken earlier hesitated, then slowly replied, "Are pirates even human?" Thus, the atmosphere grew increasingly charged. As time passed, evening fell. Meanwhile, Yaren was outside the city, organizing soldiers to erect a camp. Within his tent, he scrutinized a map, reluctant to force an assault on the city. The elite soldiers he commanded would incur substantial losses in a direct attack, rendering it unwise. At that moment, a squad leader entered, supporting an individual between 2 soldiers. "Lord Traelon, this man comes from within the city and bears a letter for you." "Let me see," Yaren said, lifting his gaze with ease. The squad leader produced the letter and presented it to Yaren, who gestured for an attendant to retrieve it and open it on the table. After reading, Yaren chuckled and remarked to the knight captain beside him, "The merchants and mercenaries within the city wish to collaborate with us, stating that as long as we safeguard their enterprises, they will assist us in defeating Miles Sane and seizing Bloodstone Island." "Ha ha ha, my lord, this is splendid news." "Indeed," Yaren replied, his spirits lifted. He turned to the prostrate man, saying, "Go tell your master that I have agreed to their demands. Return and report." "Yes, noble lord," the man exclaimed with joy, quickly rising and being escorted out of the camp by soldiers. The following morning, a thin mist enveloped Bloodstone City, where weary sentinels gazed at the distant camp, some even dozing against the city walls. Suddenly, a plume of black smoke erupted from one end of the wall. While the guards at the city gate lay sprawled, silent and motionless, the soldiers atop the walls were roused by the smoke, urgently shaking their sleeping comrades. A flurry of footsteps echoed from the Traelon camp, where all soldiers were fully armed and prepared for action. Ahead, 100 cavalrymen, led by a squad leader, made the first strike, seizing the opportunity presented by the open city gates to storm into the city. Following closely behind, Yaren, clad in black armor and wielding a raised longsword, commanded the infantry phalanx, advancing in perfect unison, shields raised above their heads to deflect sporadic arrows. The chaos on the city walls intensified as the allied forces surged forward, disrupting the archers' aim. As the morning mist dissipated, the cacophony of battle fell silent, revealing the black and blue banner of the Tran family, displayed upside down, signifying their complete conquest of Bloodstone City. The pirate leaders were left hanging lifeless upon the walls, while merchants and mercenaries remained in the city, their forces decimated by internal strife against the pirates. Witnessing the fate of the pirates instilled fear in their hearts. Yaren Trant stepped forward, flanked by his guards, and ascended the dais in the square. He proclaimed loudly that the Trant family harbored a profound disdain for pirates. "Though some among you are undoubtedly guilty of heinous deeds, my friends, The Tran family is one of tolerance. As long as you abide by our rules, you need not fear punishment from us. Instead, if you prove your worth, I shall bestow upon you generous rewards, whether you be slave traders, mercenaries, or even courtesans. I am never reluctant to offer bounty for valor." Upon hearing Yalen's words, the diverse crowd exhaled in relief, erupting into fervent cheers. Yalen maintained a facade of a smile. Yet he understood that the nature of slave trading and brothels could not be eradicated overnight. At least for now, the Tran family lacked the power to enact such change. To forcefully alter the status quo would be untenable in the blood-soaked and crime-ridden Staircase Islands. His immediate desire was to bolster his strength and that of his family, to ensure ample self-defense before the arrival of Daenerys Targaryen. Otherwise, when she traversed the Staircase Islands, the Tran family, as the architects of the downfall of House Targaryen, would inevitably be implicated. With the noble coalition restraining his moves, his next step was to eliminate Miles Sane and secure absolute control over Bloodstone Island. As these thoughts coursed through his mind, a glimmer of ambition sparkled in his eyes. In the evening, Yalen was outside the city, organizing his troops to set up camp. Inside his tent, he studied a map, deliberating his strategy. He had no desire to launch a direct assault. The soldiers he had brought were elite, and the casualties incurred from a forceful attack would be too great, a cost not worth bearing. At that moment, a squad leader entered, bearing 2 soldiers who were assisting a man. "My Lord Trant, this man comes from within the city, bringing a letter addressed to you." "Let me see." Yalen replied casually as he raised his gaze. The squad leader produced the letter at random and presented it to Yalen. He gestured for his attendant to take it and open it, spreading the parchment upon the table to read. After finishing his thoughts, Yalen chuckled and addressed the captain of the knights beside him, revealing the merchants' and mercenaries' intentions within the city to collaborate with them. He remarked that as long as they safeguarded their interests, they would assist in vanquishing Mileson and seizing Bloodstone Island. "Ha ha ha, my lord, this is indeed splendid news." Yalen expressed his delight and directed the prostrate individual on the ground to convey to his master that he had consented to their plans. "Return and report," he commanded. "Yes, noble lord," the man replied with surprise, hastily rising and being escorted out of the camp by the soldiers. The following dawn, a thin veil of mist enveloped Bloodstone City. While the weary sentinels gazed at the distant camp, some even dozing against the city walls. Suddenly, a plume of black smoke billowed ominously from one end of the walls, and the guards at the city gate lay lifeless on either side, their silence unsettling. The soldiers atop the walls were roused by the smoke, frantically shaking their sleeping comrades. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the Tranda camp, where all soldiers were already donned in full armor, prepared for battle. A detachment of cavalry, led by a squad leader, charged forth first, eager to exploit the open gates and penetrate the city. Following closely, Yalen, clad in black armor and brandishing a longsword, led the infantry phalanx, advancing in unison with shields raised overhead to deflect stray arrows. Meanwhile, chaos erupted atop the walls as the allied forces surged forward, disrupting the archers' shots. As the morning mist dissipated, the cries of battle ceased, and the blue and black flag of the Tranda family, depicting a hanging figure, was hoisted on the walls, signifying their complete conquest of Bloodstone City. The pirate leaders were left hanging from the walls, and the city was now populated solely by merchants and mercenaries, whose forces had suffered grievous losses in the infighting with the pirates. Witnessing the pirates' fate filled them with trepidation. Yalen Tranda stepped forward, flanked by his guards, and descended to the platform in the square. He proclaimed, "The Tranda family despises pirates. Though some of you may share in their sins, my friends, the Tranda family is forgiving. As long as you adhere to our rules, you need not fear retribution from us. Conversely, if you prove your worth, I shall bestow upon you generous rewards, be you slave traders, mercenaries, or courtesans. As long as you achieve merit, my rewards shall never be scant." Upon hearing Yalen's declarations, the diverse crowd exhaled in relief and erupted into enthusiastic cheers. While Yalen maintained a smile, he was acutely aware that the existence of slave traders and courtesans could not be eradicated overnight. At least for now. The Tranda family lacked the capacity to effect such change. If they attempted to enforce it, survival on these blood-soaked and crime-riddled Stone Steps Islands would be untenable. What he truly desired was to swiftly enhance his own power and that of his family, ensuring sufficient strength for self-preservation before the rise of Daenerys. Otherwise, when Daenerys arrives at the Stone Steps Isles, the Targaryen family, as the pivotal force behind the overthrow, will inevitably be implicated. With the noble coalition restraining their movement, the next step is to eliminate Miles Sane and secure Bloodstone Island completely. Yinlin contemplated this, his eyes shimmering with unbridled ambition. As dusk fell, Yinlin was outside the city, organizing soldiers to set up camp. Inside the tent, he meticulously studied a map, reluctant to force an assault on the city. The soldiers he had brought were elite. A direct attack would incur significant losses, rendering the endeavor fruitless. At that moment, a squad leader entered, supporting an individual between two soldiers. Lord Tarlon. This man comes from within the city, bearing letters for you. Let me see, Yinlin replied nonchalantly, lifting his gaze. The squad leader retrieved the letter and presented it to Yinlin, who instructed a nearby attendant to open it. As the parchment was laid upon the table, Yinlin perused its contents and smiled. He turned to the captain of the knights, saying, "The merchants and mercenaries in the city have devised a plan to cooperate with us. They assure that if we protect their interests, they will aid us in defeating Marl Sane and seizing Bloodstone Island." "Haha, my lord, this is indeed splendid news." "Indeed," Yinlin affirmed, addressing the man on the ground. "Go tell your master that I have agreed to all demands. Return and report." "Yes, esteemed lord," the man exclaimed in surprise, hastily rising and being escorted out of the camp by soldiers. The following morning, a thin mist enveloped Bloodstone City. As weary soldiers at their posts gazed towards the distant camp, some having already succumbed to slumber against the city walls. Suddenly, a plume of black smoke billowed from one end of the battlements, while the guards at the city gates lay sprawled on either side, silent and motionless. The soldiers atop the walls were roused by the smoke, frantically shaking their slumbering comrades. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the Tarlon camp, where every soldier was already fully armed and prepared. Leading the charge, 100 cavalrymen surged forth under the command of the squad leader, aiming to seize the moment of the gates standing ajar to storm the city. Following closely behind, Yinlin, donned in black armor, raised his sword high, leading the infantry phalanx in a synchronized and rapid advance, shields raised overhead to deflect the sporadic arrows raining down. Chaos erupted atop the walls as the internal forces surged forward, disrupting the archers' ability to fire. Thus, as the morning mist dissipated, the clamor of battle ceased, revealing the Tarlon family banner, black against a blue background, depicting a figure hanged upside down, flapping proudly atop the walls, signifying the Tarlon army's complete occupation of Bloodstone City. The pirate leaders hung lifeless from the battlements, leaving only merchants and mercenaries within the city, who had suffered heavy losses in their internal strife against the pirates. Witnessing the fate of the pirates, they were filled with trepidation. Yinlin Tarlon stepped forward, flanked by his guards, and ascended to the platform in the square. He proclaimed loudly that the Tran family harbors a profound disdain for pirates. "Although some of you may be irredeemable, my friends, the Tran family is accommodating. As long as you adhere to our rules, you need not fear punishment from us. Conversely, should you perform meritorious deeds, I shall bestow upon you generous rewards, regardless of whether you are slave traders, mercenaries, or even courtesans. In my domain, rewards are never withheld for those who prove themselves." Upon hearing Yalen's words, the diverse crowd within the hall exhaled in relief and erupted into fervent cheers, while Yalen maintained a smiling facade. He was acutely aware that the existence of slave traders and courtesans could not be halted, at least for the time being. The Tran family lacked the means to effect such changes. To attempt to forcefully alter this reality would spell disaster in the blood-soaked and crime-ridden Stone Steps Isles. For now, his singular ambition was to swiftly elevate his own strength and that of his family, ensuring sufficient power for self-preservation before the arrival of Daenerys. Otherwise, when she eventually traversed the Stone Steps Isles, the Tran family, as the architects of the Targaryen downfall, would inevitably be implicated, with the noble coalition restraining them. He contemplated the next move, to eliminate Merlessa Sin and seize complete control of Bloodstone Isle. Such thoughts fueled his eyes with burgeoning ambition. As evening fell, Yalen was outside the city, overseeing the assembly of his soldiers' encampment. Inside the tent, he scrutinized maps, reluctant to initiate a forceful siege. The soldiers he had brought were elite. The losses from a direct assault would be disproportionate and unworthy of the effort. At that moment, a squad leader entered, supporting an individual between two soldiers. "Lord Tran, this person hails from within the city and brings a letter for you." "Let me see," Yalen replied, lifting his gaze with ease. The squad leader promptly produced the letter and presented it to Yalen. He then instructed a nearby attendant to retrieve and open it. Spreading the parchment across the table, Yalen read it and smiled, turning to the captain of his knights. "The merchants and mercenaries within the city plan to collaborate with us. They have pledged their assistance in defeating Merlessa's son and taking Bloodstone Isle, provided we safeguard their interests." "Haha, my lord, this is indeed splendid news." Yalen's delight was unmistakable, and he addressed the prostrate figure on the ground. "Go tell your master that I have agreed to their terms. Return and report accordingly." "Yes, most esteemed lord," the man exclaimed in surprise, hastily rising and promptly escorted out of the camp by soldiers. The following dawn, a thin mist enveloped Bloodstone City. and the weary guards gazed toward the distant encampment, some already dozing against the city walls. Suddenly, a plume of black smoke billowed from one end of the battlements. At that moment, the guards at the city gate lay sprawled on either side, rendered silent. The soldiers atop the walls were startled awake by the smoke and hurriedly jostled their slumbering comrades as the sound of footsteps from the Tran camp echoed ominously. All soldiers were already fully armed and prepared for the impending confrontation. At the forefront, 100 cavalrymen, led by their squad leader, launched the initial assault, seizing the opportunity presented by the open city gates to surge into the heart of the city. Following closely, Yaren, clad in black armor and wielding a raised longsword, spearheaded the infantry phalanx, advancing in a disciplined formation, shields held aloft to deflect the sporadic arrows raining down from the walls. Amidst the chaos, the allied forces, acting as insiders, surged onto the battlements, disrupting the archers' aim. As the morning mist lifted, the din of battle subsided, revealing the black and blue banner of the Talon family, depicting a figure hanging upside down, proudly displayed upon the walls, signifying the complete occupation of Bloodstone City by the Talon forces. The pirate leaders met their fate, strung up upon the battlements, leaving only merchants and mercenaries within the city, whose forces had suffered significant losses in their internecine conflicts with the pirates. Witnessing the grim fate of the pirates, they were left trembling with fear. Yaren Talon stepped forward, flanked by his guards, and ascended the platform in the square. He proclaimed loudly that the Talon family held a deep-seated hatred for pirates. Though some of you may be irredeemably wicked, my friends, the Talon family is forgiving. As long as you adhere to our rules, you need not fear punishment from us. Conversely, if you prove yourselves, I shall reward you handsomely. Whether you are a slave trader, a mercenary, or even a courtesan, I have never been stingy with my rewards. Upon hearing Yalen's words, the diverse crowd exhaled in relief, erupting into fervent cheers. While Yaren maintained a smile, he understood that the existence of slave traders and courtesans could not simply be eradicated. The Talon family currently lacked the power to effect such change. Any attempt to forcibly alter this dynamic would prove untenable in the blood-soaked and crime-ridden Stone Steppes archipelago. His primary ambition was to bolster his own strength and that of his family, ensuring they had sufficient means of self-preservation before the rise of the Mother of Dragons. Failure to do so would inevitably entangle the Talon family in the upheaval when she arrived at the Stone Steppes archipelago, as they would be recognized as key players in the overthrow of House Targaryen, with the noble coalition holding them in check. Yaren contemplated the next move, to eliminate Miles Sane and fully seize Bloodstone Island. As he pondered this, his eyes gleamed with burgeoning ambition. Later that evening, outside the city, Yaren organized his soldiers to set up camp. Within his tent, he studied maps, determined not to force an assault on the city. The elite soldiers he had brought with him were too valuable. A direct attack would incur greater losses, proving counterproductive. At that moment, a squad leader entered, supporting a man between two soldiers. "My Lord Talon, this man hails from within the city and brings a letter for you." "Let me see it," Yaren replied, raising his eyes with ease. The squad leader produced the letter and presented it to Yaren, who instructed a nearby attendant to take it and open it. The parchment was spread out upon the table as he began to read. After reading, Yaren chuckled and addressed the captain of the knights beside him, revealing the merchants' and mercenaries' intentions within the city to collaborate with them. He added that as long as they safeguarded their interests, they would aid in defeating Molaise and seizing Bloodstone Island. "Ha ha ha, my lord, this is indeed splendid news," Yaren exclaimed, visibly pleased. He turned to the man lying on the ground and commanded, "Go tell your master that I have consented to everything. Return and report." "Yes, esteemed lord," the man replied, joyfully scrambling to his feet before being escorted out of the camp by soldiers. The following dawn, a thin mist enveloped Bloodstone City, with weary sentinels gazing at the distant camp. Some had even fallen asleep against the city walls. Suddenly, a plume of black smoke erupted from one end of the wall, while the guards at the city gate lay sprawled on either side, utterly silent. The soldiers atop the walls were jolted awake by the smoke, hastily rousing their slumbering comrades. A cacophony of footsteps echoed from the Traelon camp as all soldiers donned their armor and prepared for action. Commanded by a squad leader, the cavalry surged forth first, aiming to penetrate the city through the wide-open gates. Following closely, Yaren, clad in black armor and wielding a raised longsword, led the infantry phalanx, advancing in perfect unison, shields raised overhead to deflect scattered arrows. A tumultuous battle unfolded atop the walls as the allied forces surged forward, disrupting the archers' volleys. As the morning mist dissipated and the clamor of battle ceased, the blue and black banner of the Traelon family hung triumphantly from the walls, signifying their complete conquest of Bloodstone City. The pirate leaders were hanged at the ramparts, leaving only merchants and mercenaries within the city, their forces having suffered grievous losses in the internecine struggle against the pirates. Witnessing the pirates' fate, they were all struck with fear. Yalen Trelon stepped forward, flanked by his guards, and ascended the platform in the square. In a resonant voice, he proclaimed, "The Trelon family harbors a deep disdain for pirates. While some of you may also be irredeemable, fear not, my friends. Trelon is a family of tolerance. As long as you abide by our rules, you need not fear retribution from us. Instead, if you accomplish merit, I shall bestow upon you generous rewards, regardless of whether you are slave traders, mercenaries, or even courtesans. There are no limitations to the rewards I offer for those who succeed." Upon hearing Yalen's declaration, the diverse crowd exhaled in relief, erupting into fervent cheers. Yalen maintained a facade of smiles, yet he was acutely aware that the existence of slave traders and brothels could not be eradicated immediately, at least for now. The Trelon family lacked the capacity to enact such changes. To force a transformation would be to risk survival on this island rife with bloodshed and crime. His sole desire was to swiftly enhance his own strength and that of his family, ensuring sufficient means of self-preservation before the rise of Daenerys Targaryen. Otherwise, with the arrival of Daenerys at the Stone Steps Islands, it is inevitable that the Targaryen family will be implicated as the significant contributors to her overthrow. With the noble coalition restraining them, Yalen contemplated the next step of eliminating Myrlis Sane and completely occupying Bloodstone Island, his eyes glinting with fervent ambition. As evening descended, Yalen was outside the city, organizing soldiers to set up a camp. Within the tent, he studied a map, not wishing to force an assault on the city. The soldiers he had brought were elite. The losses from a direct attack would be substantial and unjustifiable. At that moment, a squad leader entered, supporting an individual between two soldiers. "Lord Tarlon, this man hails from within the city and brings a letter for you," he said. "Let me see it," Yalen replied casually. Lifting his gaze, the squad leader produced the letter and presented it to Yalen. He immediately instructed a nearby attendant to open it, spreading the parchment across the table. After reading, Yalen smiled and remarked to the knight captain beside him, "The merchants and mercenaries within the city intend to collaborate with us. They claim that as long as their interests are preserved, they will aid us in defeating Myrlis Sane and seizing Bloodstone Island." "Haha, my lord, this is indeed splendid news." "Indeed," Yalen responded with delight, addressing the man on the ground. "Go tell your master that I agree to all his demands. Return and report." "Yes, esteemed lord," the man exclaimed in surprise, hastily rising, and was promptly escorted out of the camp by the soldiers. The following morning, a thin mist enveloped Bloodstone City. As the weary guards gazed at the distant camp, some even dozing against the city walls, suddenly, a plume of black smoke erupted from one end of the battlements. While the guards at the city gates lay sprawled on either side, silent, the soldiers atop the walls were roused by the smoke and hurriedly nudged their sleeping comrades. An urgent commotion arose from Tarlin's camp, where all soldiers were already fully armed and prepared. 100 cavalry, led by the squad leader, charged forth first, seeking to exploit the open gates and penetrate the city. Following closely, Yalen, clad in black armor and wielding a raised longsword, led the infantry phalanx, advancing in unison. Shields held high to deflect stray arrows. The walls became a chaotic battleground as the allied forces surged upward, disrupting the archers' fire. Thus, as the morning mist dissipated, the cries of battle ceased, and the blue and black banner of the Tarlon family, depicting a black figure hanging upside down, was hoisted atop the walls, signifying their complete occupation of Bloodstone City. The pirate leaders dangled lifeless from the battlements, leaving behind only merchants and mercenaries in the city, their forces having suffered devastating losses in the internecine conflict with the pirates. Witnessing the fate of the pirates, they were filled with trepidation. Yalen Tarlon advanced, flanked by his guards, and stood upon the elevated platform in the square. He spoke loudly, declaring that the Turin family harbored a deep disdain for pirates. "While some among you may indeed be irredeemable, my friends, the Turin family is known for its tolerance. As long as you adhere to our rules, you need not fear retribution from us. Conversely, should you achieve merit, I shall bestow upon you generous rewards, regardless of whether you are a slave trader, a mercenary, or even a courtesan. I have never been stingy with rewards for those who accomplish deeds of valor." Upon hearing Eileen's words, the diverse crowd within the hall collectively exhaled a sigh of relief, erupting into fervent cheers. Eileen maintained a smile on the surface. Yet he understood that the existence of slave traders and courtesans was immutable. At least for now, the Turin family lacked the capacity to alter such realities. To impose change forcibly would render survival on these blood-soaked and crime-ridden stone step isles impossible. He yearned to swiftly bolster his own strength and that of his family, ensuring they possessed sufficient means of self-preservation before the arrival of the Mother of Dragons. Otherwise, when she traversed the stone step aisles, the Tran family, as the architects of the downfall of House Targaryen, would inevitably be ensnared in the ensuing turmoil, with the noble coalition restraining them. His next course of action would be to eliminate Merlise Sane and seize complete control of Bloodstone Island. Eileen harbored grand ambitions, evident in the fervor of his gaze. That evening, Eileen was outside the city, organizing soldiers to set up camp. Inside the tent, he studied maps, reluctant to launch a full-scale assault. The soldiers he had brought were elite, and the losses from a direct attack would be disproportionately severe, rendering such an endeavor futile. At that moment, a squad leader entered, assisted by 2 soldiers, carrying an individual from the city. "My Lord Turin, this man comes from within the city and bears letters for you," he announced. "Let me see." Eileen replied casually, lifting his eyes. The squad leader produced the correspondence and presented it to him. Eileen gestured for a nearby attendant to retrieve and open the letter, which he then spread across the table to peruse. After reading, Eileen chuckled and turned to the captain of the knights beside him. "The merchants and mercenaries within the city are planning to collaborate with us, promising their assistance in defeating Merlise Sane and claiming Bloodstone Island, as long as they can safeguard their enterprises." "Haha, my lord, this is indeed splendid news." "Indeed," Eileen responded with delight, addressing the man still prostrate on the ground. "Go tell your master that I have agreed to all his demands. Return and report." "Yes, esteemed lord," the man replied, his surprise evident as he hurriedly rose, only to be escorted out of the camp by the soldiers. The following morning, a thin mist enveloped Bloodstone City. The weary sentinels gazed toward the distant camp, some having already succumbed to slumber against the city walls. Suddenly, a plume of black smoke arose abruptly from one end of the battlements, while the guards at the gate lay sprawled on either side, lifeless and silent. The soldiers atop the walls were jolted awake by the ominous smoke, urgently shaking their slumbering comrades. The sound of hurried footsteps emanated from the Turin camp, where all soldiers had already donned their armor and prepared for the impending confrontation. Ahead, 100 cavalrymen, led by their squadron leader, launched a preemptive strike, eager to seize the opportunity presented by the open city gates and penetrate directly into the heart of the city. Following them, Yaren, clad in black armor and wielding a raised longsword, commanded the infantry formation, advancing swiftly and in unison. Shields held high to deflect the sporadic arrows raining down from the walls. Amidst the chaos, the allied forces surged onto the battlements, disrupting the archers' aim. Thus, as the morning mist dissipated and the clamor of battle ceased, the blue and black flag of the Tran family, depicting a hanging figure, was hoisted upon the walls, signaling their complete dominion over Bloodstone City. The pirate leaders were left dangling from the battlements, while the city was left with only merchants and mercenaries, their ranks decimated by infighting with the pirates, now quaking in fear at the fate of their former foes. Yalen Trant stepped forward, flanked by his guards, and ascended the dais in the square. He proclaimed loudly that the Trant family harbored a deep-seated animosity towards pirates. "While some among you may be irredeemable, my friends, the Trant family is one of inclusivity. As long as you adhere to our rules, you need not fear punishment from us. On the contrary, should you earn merit, I shall reward you handsomely, regardless of whether you are a slave trader, a mercenary, or even a courtesan. I am never stingy with rewards for those who prove themselves." Upon hearing Yalen's words, the diverse crowd exhaled a collective sigh of relief, erupting into fervent cheers. Yalen maintained a smile. Yet he was acutely aware that the presence of slave traders and courtesans could not be eradicated overnight. The Trant family currently lacked the power to effect such change. To forcefully alter the status quo would spell disaster in this island rife with bloodshed and crime. His primary focus was to bolster his strength and that of his family, ensuring they possessed adequate means of self-defense before the arrival of the Mother of Dragons. Otherwise, when she traversed the Stone Steps Islands, the Trant family, as a key player in the overthrow of House Targaryen, would inevitably face repercussions, with the noble coalition holding them at bay. Yalen resolved to eliminate Merlise Sane and secure complete control of Bloodstone Island. As he contemplated this, ambition gleamed in his eyes. Later that evening, outside the city, Yalen organized his soldiers to set up camp, retreating into his tent to study maps, as he had no intention of launching a direct assault. The soldiers he had brought were elite, and the costs of a forced attack would be exorbitant and unwise. At that moment, a squad leader entered, assisting 2 soldiers who carried a man between them. "My Lord Trant, this man hails from within the city and brings a letter for you." "Let me see," Yalen replied, lifting his gaze with a relaxed demeanor. The squad leader produced the letter at random and presented it to Yalen. He signaled for one of his attendants to retrieve it and opened the parchment, spreading it out upon the table to read. After reading, Yalen chuckled and turned to the captain of the knights, sharing the merchants' and mercenaries' intentions within the city to collaborate with them. He mentioned that as long as they preserved their industries, they would assist in defeating Miles and seizing Bloodstone Island. Ha ha ha, my lord, this is indeed splendid news, Yaren exclaimed, visibly delighted. He addressed the man sprawled on the ground, instructing him to inform his master that he had acquiesced to their demands and to return with the message. Yes, esteemed lord, the man replied in surprise, hastily rising and being escorted out of the camp by soldiers. The following morning, a thin mist enveloped Bloodstone City, where the weary guards gazed at the distant camp, some even dozing against the city walls. Suddenly, a plume of black smoke erupted from one end of the ramparts. While the guards at the city gate had collapsed beside it, long silenced, the soldiers atop the walls were jolted awake by the smoke, urgently shaking their slumbering comrades. A cacophony of footsteps echoed from the Traelon camp as all soldiers, fully armored, prepared for action. The vanguard of 100 cavalry, led by a squad leader, charged forth, eager to exploit the open city gates and breach the city. Following closely, Yaren, donned in black armor, raised his long sword high, leading the infantry phalanx in a swift, synchronized advance. Shields held aloft, they protected against sporadic arrows raining down. The battleground atop the walls devolved into chaos as the allied forces surged onto the ramparts, disrupting the archers' fire. As the morning mist dissipated and the clamor of battle ceased, the blue and black banner of the Traelon family, depicting a hanging figure, unfurled atop the walls, signifying their complete occupation of Bloodstone City. The pirate leaders were left hanging by the ramparts, leaving only merchants and mercenaries within, who had sustained heavy losses in their internal strife against the pirates. Witnessing the fate of the pirates, they were filled with trepidation. Yaren Traelon approached the forefront, flanked by his guards, and ascended the platform in the square. He proclaimed, "The Traelon family harbors a profound disdain for pirates. Though some of you may be irredeemable, my friends, Traelon is forgiving. As long as you adhere to our rules, you need not fear punishment from the Traelon family. Conversely, should you achieve merit, I shall bestow upon you generous rewards, regardless of whether you are a slave trader, a mercenary, or even a courtesan, as long as you contribute. I am never one to withhold my rewards." Upon hearing Yaren's declarations, the diverse crowd exhaled a collective sigh of relief, erupting into fervent cheers, while Yaren wore a smile. He was acutely aware that the issues of slave trading and brothels could not be swiftly resolved, at least for now. The Traelon family lacked the capacity to effect such changes. If they attempted to enforce drastic alterations, survival within the blood-soaked and crime-ridden steppes of the island would be untenable. He now sought to swiftly augment his power and that of his family, ensuring they possessed sufficient strength for self-preservation before the rise of the Dragon Queen. Otherwise, when Daenerys arrives at the Stone Steppes archipelago, it is inevitable that the Targaryen family, as the key figures in the overthrow of House Targaryen, will be implicated. With the noble coalition holding them at bay, Yaren contemplated the next step, to eliminate Miles and seize complete control of Bloodstone Island, his eyes gleaming with unbridled ambition. Chapter 11. The campaign in the Bloodstone Caves. The Bloodstone Caves, nestled within the largest mountain range of Bloodstone Island, boast a unique topography. True to their name, these caves are numerous, most of which are naturally formed and subsequently interconnected by the island's pirates, rendering them formidable strongholds that are difficult to breach. Historically, during the War of the Stone Steppes archipelago, which commenced in the 106th year of the Age of Aegon, the presence of the Bloodstone Caves provided a turning point for the beleaguered forces of the Kingdom of the Three Daughters. Even the mighty dragon bloodworm Corlax of Demon Targaryen could not inflict harm upon those sheltered within the caves. Consequently, the conflict reached a stalemate, with the navy of the Kingdom of the Three Daughters, led by Clehasta Dar, gaining the upper hand. Many knights within Demon's coalition felt discontent regarding this brutal warfare, akin to a meat grinder. Once they approached the front lines, they were met with a relentless barrage of arrows from the defenders at the cave's entrance. The enemy held the high ground, rendering effective retaliation nearly impossible. They could only endure the onslaught passively. Had it not been for Clehasta Dar, the crab feeder, who, upon witnessing Demon's feigned surrender, ordered the troops to exit the caves, the inevitable retreat would have belonged to Demon's forces, ambushed by the coalition led by the Sea Serpent and several dragons. In the 108th year of the Age of Aegon, Clehasta Dar met his demise in a one-on-one duel with Demon within the Bloodstone Caves. At this juncture, Miles and a cadre of pirates were reveling with fine wine looted from Green Pavilion Island. Several pirates, inebriated, disregarded the decorum, engaging in indiscreet activities with the women they had captured. Despite learning of the invasion of Bloodstone City just days prior, Miles remained unfazed. He had his own plans. Upon receiving word of the arrival of House Targaryen's forces on Bloodstone Island, he began to strategize. Recognizing that he could not directly defeat the heavily armored elite of House Targaryen, He recalled the formidable prowess demonstrated by the Black Iron Legion in previous battles. Each soldier possessed remarkable skill, capable of fending off 10 adversaries without difficulty. Initially, he dispatched small groups of pirates to conduct raids, gauging their combat capabilities and gathering intelligence. The results were more astonishing than he had anticipated. House Targaryen's troops, organized in groups of 5, managed to annihilate a band of 300 pirates while suffering merely 2 casualties. Their tactics rendered them virtually invincible in skirmishes. This realization instilled fear in him, prompting a hasty retreat to the Bloodstone caves, a sanctuary he believed would offer him solace. He surmised that Yaren Targaryen would first assault the more vulnerable Bloodstone city, and after enduring a siege, House Targaryen would no longer pose a threat to the Bloodstone caves. As long as he remains within the Bloodstone cavern, he can both advance in attack and retreat in defense, free from the fears of a beleaguered Talon legion. Even if Arlen Talon proves formidable, the cavern, capable of counterattacking under the dragon's flame, presents no significant challenge in terms of defense, provided he can hold them at bay. He has already prepared a contingency plan, dispatching his subordinates to send word to the pirates on the other isles of the Stairway Archipelago. The pirates of the archipelago harbor no love for Talon. Once reinforcements arrive, he can emerge to strike down the beleaguered Talon forces, rendering them a mere shadow of their former threat. The pirates have long suffered under Talon's oppressive hand, yet mutual distrust has prevented their unification. Should he succeed in eliminating this Talon contingent, he could shatter Talon's hold and perhaps restore the chaos that once defined the Stairway Archipelago. With the trade routes between the 2 continents at his disposal, his wealth would undoubtedly flourish. Thus, he felt no anxiety. Everything unfolded according to plan. However, events were not as straightforward as he had envisioned. Just as he delighted in the enchanting dance of a nearby performer, news from Bloodstone City arrived. The tidings revealed that mercenaries and merchants had betrayed him, defecting to Talon, while the losses suffered by the Talon Legion were negligible. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a surge of fury that compelled him to hurl a wine barrel to the ground, causing the women present to gasp and the men to adopt a grave demeanor, their earlier mirth extinguished. Miles Sane trembled with fear. He yearned to flee Bloodstone Island, yet could not. As a greedy Tyrosian merchant, he possessed no martial prowess. Relying solely on wealth to hire soldiers, and on his reputation and ruthless tactics to command the pirates. To exhibit cowardice now would diminish his standing, leaving him vulnerable to these lawless brigands. He could not show weakness. Instead, he cloaked his inner dread with a veil of rage. Cursed Arlen Talon! Should they arrive here, I shall pin him and his army to the beach, rendering them worse than the crabs that feast upon the remnants. Lord Sane is mighty. The pirates echoed in agreement. Miles then turned to a nearby pirate and inquired about the dispatched message. The inebriated pirate leaned unsteadily, squinting as he replied, Lord Sane. Only 4 small pirate crews have responded. Oh, what did they say? Miles continued, his gaze fixed on the pirate. Although he anticipated a sparse response, he had not expected it to be so meager. He had depicted the Talon forces in his missive as utterly incompetent. Surely, there should have been at least a dozen willing to take the risk. The few who did respond claimed they would come, but only after the pirate conference at Torture Abyss concluded. What pirate conference? Miles furrowed his brow in confusion. The drunken pirate's eyes widened as he recounted. The 3 major pirate crews of Torture Abyss, having achieved great success in their recent plunder, convened a conference to invite pirates to partake in the spoils. What a gathering of pirates! I perceive that this band of rogues has been manipulated. The methods of the Torture Abyss are indeed cunning. Thus, it need not fear a lack of resistance against the tempestuous army. Mileson squinted his eyes and laid bare the sordidness of the situation. No one paid him any heed, and the pirates resumed their hedonistic revelry after a brief moment of silence. In stark contrast, his despair deepened. He could only pray that these wretched pirates might display some semblance of valor upon the battlefield. When the army of Alintalin arrived at the Bloodstone Cavern, he dispatched his first masterpiece, a rudimentary version of the Mandarin duck formation, Awaken from his memories. Each phalanx was defended by 2 massive iron shields at the front, with 2 spear wielders and a crossbowman shielded behind them. Thus, they advanced slowly and steadily, unperturbed. The rain of arrows released by the soldiers in the caves was utterly ineffective, merely glancing off the shields and sparking in their wake. The shields, forged from iron, exemplified the advantage of the Tran family, who, despite their limited numbers, spared no expense in weaponry and armor. Whenever the barrage of arrows ceased, the crossbowmen behind the shields would present their bolts, aiming at the cavern. Although the impact was minimal, it achieved a degree of fire suppression, allowing the shield bearers to lead the advance significantly forward. Upon witnessing this, Mileson realized the futility of the situation and ordered a portion of the pirates to charge down the mountain for close combat. When these pirates reached the Tran forces, The shields of the Tran army opened, and Milson immediately commanded the archers to fire. He cared not for the lives of the pirates. However, as a volley of arrows rained down, some pirates were pierced by their comrades' shots, while others were struck by the long spears. The spearmen, with their weapons extended outward, remained shielded and unharmed. Despair engulfed Milson. Such a formation could only be countered by cavalry, yet surrounded as he was by pirates. Where could he procure horses? At that moment, Alintalin stood behind a wall of shields, flanked by 3 knight captains who protected him as they advanced slowly through the ranks. As the pirates charged, he immediately called upon Pikachu for support, seeking to ensure a steady advance. As the waning sun cast a crimson hue over the entire Bloodstone Mountains, Alintalin found himself before Milson. In a moment of resolve, Milson declared, "I demand a knightly duel." A knightly duel is a customary practice among noble knights, conducted in formal settings. Neither party is permitted to bring attendants, and the combat must be one-on-one. Unlike a trial by combat, it bears no divine significance, and the challenged party may refuse, though such an act would invite scorn for cowardice. Most honorable noble knights, valuing their reputation, would acquiesce to the duel, for such contests are regarded as the pinnacle of glory. "I consent," Alintalin replied, "though it must be one-on-one. May I bring this mouse along?" Yaren remarked that mules decisively refused. Undeterred, Yaren shamelessly persisted, asking, "Is it truly impossible?" "No means no," mules reiterated firmly. "Very well, let it be a hanging," Yaren replied, somewhat disheartened, and waved his hand to signal the soldiers nearby. "How can you do this? It is dishonorable," mules exclaimed, aghast. "If you do not wish for my honor, then we must adhere to tradition. Let him be hanged. Grant him his honor," Yaren pronounced without a hint of concern, issuing his final verdict. Subsequently, under the soldier's execution, Mules met his ignoble end at the mouth of the cave, his vibrant attire failing to conceal the terror etched upon his face in his final moments. Mulesane then turned to a nearby pirate and inquired, "What news of the dispatched letter?" The drunken pirate, swaying slightly, squinted and replied, "My lord Sane. Only 4 small pirate crews have responded." "Oh, what did they say?" Mulesane continued to gaze at him, for although he had anticipated a meager response, he had not expected it to be so scant. The crew he had described in his letter as wretched should have mustered at least a dozen daring enough to take the risk. Yet only such a paltry number of pirate crews had shown interest, which seemed quite peculiar. They claimed they would come, but only after the pirate assembly at Torture Abyss concluded. "What pirate assembly?" Mulesane inquired, furrowing his brow in confusion. "The 3 major pirate crews of Torture Abyss have, after their successful plunder, garnered immense wealth and thus convened a pirate assembly, inviting other pirates to partake in the spoils," the drunken pirate elaborated, his eyes wide as if he were recounting the event live. "What pirate assembly? I see that these pirates have been manipulated. Torture Abyss is cunning indeed. With this tactic, they need not fear any resistance from the Stormland S forces," Mulesane discerned, narrowing his eyes and exposing the underlying deceit. No one paid him heed, and the pirates in the room, after a brief silence, resumed their raucous behavior. In contrast, Mulesane felt an increasing despair. He could only pray that these ineffectual pirates would show some semblance of valor on the battlefield. When Yalen's Talon army arrived at the Bloodstone Cavern, he deployed his first masterpiece, Awaken from his memories, a simplified version of the Mandarin duck formation he had trained. Each formation was fortified with 2 massive shields at the front for defense, behind which stood 2 pikemen and an arbalist. Thus, they advanced steadily and unhurriedly. As the arrows rained down from the soldiers in the cave proved utterly ineffective, glancing off the shields and sparking upon contact. The shields were forged of iron. The sparsity of manpower was a disadvantage for Greyshield Island, yet the Talon family, pursuing a path of elite soldiers, spared no expense on weaponry and equipment. Whenever the hail of arrows ceased, the arbalists behind the shields would reveal their crossbows and fire towards the cave. Although the impact was minimal, they achieved some degree of fire suppression, during which the shield bearers led their ranks forward significantly. Observing this, Mulesane realized that this was not a viable strategy and commanded a portion of the pirates to descend the mountain for close combat. As the band of pirates charged towards the Tran army, their shields were raised in defense. Milas immediately commanded his archers to unleash their arrows, showing no regard for the fate of the pirates. However, as a deluge of blades fell upon them, some pirates were pierced by the arrows of their own comrades, while others fell victim to the spear's thrusts. The spearmen remained shielded beneath their protection, thus unharmed. In utter despair, Milas realized that only cavalry could counter such troops. Yet surrounded by pirates, where could he procure horses? At that moment, Yalintalin stood behind a wall of shields, flanked by 3 knight captains who shielded him as they advanced steadily through their ranks. When the pirates surged forward, he promptly called upon Pikachu for assistance. seeking a methodical approach. As the dying rays of the sun bathed the Bloodstone Mountains in crimson, Yaren found himself standing before Milas. With a steely resolve, Milas declared his challenge for a knightly duel. This form of combat was a tradition among noble knights, conducted in formal settings, where neither side was permitted to bring attendants, necessitating a one-on-one confrontation. Unlike a trial by combat, it bore no divine significance, and the challenged party could refuse, albeit at the risk of being labeled a coward. Most noble knights, valuing their honor, would accept, for such duels were deemed the most glorious of victories. I accept, but may I bring this mouse? Yaren inquired. Absolutely not. Milas replied decisively. Undeterred, Yaren pressed on. Are you certain? I saw it wielding magic. No means no, Milas reiterated firmly. Very well, then let it be a noose. Yaren responded, somewhat disheartened, and gestured to the soldiers nearby. You cannot do this. It is dishonorable. Milas exclaimed, aghast. It is you who seeks to deprive me of glory. Thus, we must adhere to the old traditions. Let it be a noose. Grant him his honor, Yaren declared, unperturbed, delivering the final verdict. Consequently, under the soldier's execution, Milas was hanged at the mouth of the cave, his vibrant attire failing to mask the terror etched upon his face in his final moments. Turning to a nearby pirate, Milas inquired, what news of the dispatch letters? The pirate, his head swaying from intoxication, squinted and replied, Lord Sane, only 4 small pirate crews responded. Oh? What did they say? Milas continued, scrutinizing him. Though he had anticipated a sparse response, he had not expected it to be so meager. He had described the Tran contingent in his letter as quite unsatisfactory, and surely at least a dozen crews would dare to come. Yet, only this meager number had arrived. They said they would come, but only after the pirate convention at Torture Abyss concludes. What pirate convention? Miles furrowed his brow in perplexity. Following the successful plunder by the 3 major pirate factions of Torture Abyss, they convened a pirate assembly, inviting their comrades to partake in the division of spoils. A drunken pirate, wide-eyed, exclaimed as if present at the scene, what pirate assembly? I see this group of pirates has been manipulated. The cunning methods of Torture Abyss ensure they have no fear of a resisting army. Miles squinted, articulating the underlying treachery. No one heeded his words. The pirates in the arena, after a brief silence, resumed their raucous revelry. In stark contrast, his despair deepened, and he could only pray that these inept pirates might exhibit some semblance of competence on the battlefield. When the army of Yaren arrived at the Bloodstone Caves, he dispatched his first masterpiece, a simplified version of the Mandarin duck formation, honed through his awakened memories. Each square was fortified with 2 enormous shields at the front, behind which stood 2 spearmen and a crossbowman. Thus, they advanced slowly and deliberately. The arrows raining down from the soldiers hidden in the mountain caves were utterly ineffective, sliding harmlessly off the shields and sparking against the iron surfaces. Given the sparse population, the lack of manpower was a disadvantage for Greyshield Island, while the Tran family prioritized spending on weaponry and equipment without hesitation. Whenever the barrage of arrows ceased, the crossbowmen behind the shields would promptly reveal their bolts and aim toward the cave. Although the impact was minimal, they managed to establish a degree of fire suppression, during which the shield bearers pressed forward a considerable distance. Observing this, Miles realized the futility of his position and commanded a portion of the pirates to charge down the mountain for close combat. When this group of pirates reached the front lines of the Tran army, the shields of the Tran soldiers opened. Miles immediately ordered the archers to fire, showing no regard for the fate of the pirates. However, as a volley of arrows was released, some pirates were pierced by their own comrades' shots, while others fell victim to the spears. The spearmen remained shielded, their bodies protected behind the iron barriers, suffering no harm. Miles was engulfed in utter despair. Such formations could only be countered by cavalry, yet all he had were pirates. Where could he procure horses? At that moment, Yaren stood behind a wall of shields, flanked by 3 knight captains for protection, steadily advancing at the center of the formation. As the pirates charged, he quickly summoned Pikachu to deliver a decisive strike, seeking a methodical approach. When the setting sun cast a crimson glow over the entire Bloodstone mountain range, Yaren found himself face to face with Miles. Resolute, Miles declared, I demand a knightly duel. A knightly duel was a customary practice among noble knights, conducted in formal settings. Neither party was permitted to bring retainers, necessitating a one-on-one confrontation. Unlike trial by combat, it bore no divine significance, and the challenged party could refuse, though such a refusal would invite accusations of cowardice. The majority of honorable noble knights would accept the duel, as victory in such contests was deemed the most glorious. Such confrontations frequently occur on the battlefield, often requiring one to acquiesce. Only then can the war be deemed magnificently fought. I consented, But is it permissible to bring this mouse along for a one-on-one? Eileen inquired. No, Miles decisively refused. Undeterred, Eileen pressed on, shamelessly asking, is it truly impossible? Don't think a Haven tea noticed its magical abilities. No means no, Miles reiterated. Very well, then let it hang, Eileen responded, somewhat disheartened, waving his hand to signal the nearby soldiers. How can you be so callous? This is disgraceful, Miles exclaimed, aghast and anxious. If you wish to deny me honor, then we must resort to the old tradition. Let it hang. Bestow upon him glory, Eileen declared nonchalantly, issuing his final judgment. Subsequently, under the soldier's execution, Miles met his end, hanging at the cave's entrance. His vibrant attire failing to conceal the terror etched upon his face in his final moments. Miles Sane then turned to a nearby pirate and inquired, what are the letters sent out? The inebriated pirate tilted his head, squinting as he replied, Lord Sane, only 4 small pirate crews have responded. Oh, what did they say? Miles Sane continued, observing him closely. Although he anticipated a meager response, he had not expected it to be so scant. He had described this trailing crew in his letter as quite unremarkable. Surely, there should have been at least a dozen willing to take the risk. The few pirate crews that did respond raised suspicions. They stated they would come, but only after the Pirate Congress at Torture Abyss concluded. What Pirate Congress? Miles Sane furrowed his brow in confusion. The 3 major pirate crews of Torture Abyss, having achieved substantial gains from their successful plunder, are convening a Pirate Congress. Inviting pirates to partake in the division of spoils, the drunken pirate explained, his eyes wide as if witnessing the event firsthand. What Pirate Congress? I suspect these pirates have been manipulated. Torture Abyss employs clever tactics. This way, they need not fear resistance against the Stormland army, Miles Sane remarked, narrowing his eyes as he unraveled the underlying deceptions. No one paid him any heed. The pirates in the vicinity, after a brief silence, resumed their raucous behavior. In stark contrast, Miles felt increasingly despondent, now left to pray that these feeble pirates would exhibit some semblance of valor on the battlefield. When Eileen Traylon's forces arrived at Bloodstone Cave, he deployed his first masterpiece, Awaken from his memories, an easily trained variant of the Mandarin Duck formation. Each squadron was fortified with 2 massive shields for defense, behind which stood 2 pikemen and an archer. Thus, they advanced steadily and unhurriedly. The rain of arrows released by the soldiers in the cave proved utterly ineffective, merely sliding off the shields, sparking in their wake. The shields were crafted from iron, a necessity dictated by the scarcity of manpower on Greyshield Island, where the Traylon family, following a strategy of elite forces, spared no expense on weaponry and equipment. Whenever the barrages of arrows ceased, the archers behind the shields would promptly reveal their crossbows and fire towards the cave. Although the results were minimal, fire suppression was achieved, during which the shield bearers led their team forward considerably. In the cave, Muiras realized that this was not a viable strategy and ordered a portion of the pirates to charge down the mountain for hand-to-hand combat. As this group of pirates reached the front lines of the Talon army, the Talon shields opened, and Muiras immediately commanded the archers to fire, showing no concern for the fate of the pirates. However, as a volley of arrows rained down, some pirates were pierced by the arrows of their own comrades, while others were impaled by pikes. The pikemen, with their weapons extended outward, remained shielded and unharmed. Muiras fell into utter despair. Only cavalry could counter such a formation. Yet all he had were pirates. Where could he possibly procure horses? At that moment, Arintalin stood behind a line of shields, protected by 3 knight captains. As they progressed steadily through the ranks, when the pirates charged, he promptly called upon Pikachu for assistance, seeking to ensure a stable advance. As the dying rays of the setting sun bathed the Bloodstone Mountains in crimson, Arintalin found himself standing before Muiras. At this juncture, Muiras, steeling himself, declared, I demand a duel of knights. The knightly duel was a customary practice among noble knights, conducted in formal settings. Neither side was permitted to bring attendants, necessitating a one-on-one confrontation. Unlike judicial combat, it bore no divine significance, and the challenged party could refuse, though such refusal would invite accusations of cowardice. Most noble knights, valuing their honor, would acquiesce to the duel, as victory in such contests was deemed the most glorious. Duels frequently occurred on the battlefield, and it was often only through acceptance that a conflict could be deemed particularly admirable. I agree to the duel. However, may I bring this mouse? Arintalin inquired. Absolutely not. Muiras firmly rejected. Undeterred, Arintalin pressed on. Is there truly no way? Do not think I am unaware of its magical abilities. No means no, Muiras reiterated with finality. Very well, let it hang, Arintalin responded, somewhat disappointed, then waved his hand to signal the soldiers. How can you do this? It is dishonorable, Muiras exclaimed, aghast. It is you who denies me glory. Thus, we must adhere to tradition. Let it hang, grant him his honor, Arintalin declared nonchalantly, issuing his final judgment. Consequently, under the soldier's execution, Muiras was honorably hanged at the cave's entrance, his vibrant attire unable to conceal the terror etched upon his face in his final moments. Muiras then turned to a nearby pirate and inquired about the dispatched message. The drunken pirate, swaying slightly, squinted as he replied, Lord Sane. Only 4 small pirate crews responded. Oh, what did they say? Muiras pressed, continuing to regard him with keen interest, aware that responses would likely be scarce. Yet he had not anticipated such a meager turnout. The team of pirates described by him in his letter appears utterly inadequate. Surely, there should be at least a dozen willing to take such risks, yet only a scant few have arrived. They claim they will come, but only after the conclusion of the Torture Abyss Pirate Conference. What conference? Milesine furrowed his brow in perplexity. The 3 major pirate factions of Torture Abyss, having reaped substantial rewards from their recent plunder, convened to invite fellow pirates to partake in the distribution of spoils. A drunken pirate, wide-eyed, spoke as if present at the gathering. What conference? I suspect this band of pirates has been manipulated. Torture Abyss employs cunning strategies, ensuring they need not fear a lack of resistance against their stormy forces. Milesine narrowed his eyes, discerning the underlying treachery. No one paid him any mind, and the pirates in the vicinity quickly resumed their raucous demeanor. In stark contrast, his despair deepened, as he could only pray that these ineffectual pirates might perform adequately on the battlefield. When the army of Yaren Tran arrived at the Bloodstone Cavern, he dispatched his first masterpiece, Awaken from his memories, a rudimentary version of the Mandarin duck formation he had trained. Each phalanx was fortified by 2 massive shields at the front, behind which 2 spearmen and a crossbowman were stationed for protection. Thus, they advanced steadily and unhurriedly. The rain of arrows unleashed by the soldiers in the cavern proved utterly futile, merely sliding off the shields and sparking as they struck. The shields, forged of iron, were a testament to the Tran family's commitment to investing in weaponry, undeterred by their smaller population on Greyshield Island. Whenever the arrow storm ceased, the archers behind the shields readied their crossbow bolts, aiming towards the cavern. Though the impact was minimal, it effectively suppressed enemy fire, allowing the shield bearers to lead the charge forward. Seeing this, Miles realized it was not a sustainable strategy and commanded a portion of the pirates to charge down the mountainside for close combat. As this band of pirates rushed towards the Tran forces, the Tran shields opened wide, and Miles immediately ordered a volley of arrows, indifferent to the fate of the pirates. However, as the rain of swords descended, some pirates were struck down by arrows from their own comrades, while others fell to the spears. The spearmen remained shielded, their bodies protected, suffering no harm. Miles fell into utter despair. Such a formation could only be countered by cavalry, yet surrounded by pirates. Where could he find horses? At that moment, Yaren Tran stood behind a line of shields, flanked by 3 knight captains for protection as they advanced slowly through the ranks. When the pirates charged, he immediately summoned Pikachu for a decisive strike, seeking to ensure a firm footing in the battle. As the remnants of the setting sun painted the Bloodstone Mountains crimson, Yaren Tran found himself face to face with Miles. In that instant, Miles steeled himself and declared, I demand a duel of knights. The knightly duel was a customary practice among noble knights, conducted in formal settings. Both parties are prohibited from bringing attendants, necessitating a one-on-one combat. Unlike a trial by combat, this duel bears no divine significance, and the opponent may decline the challenge, albeit at the risk of being branded cowardly. Most noble knights, keen on preserving their honor, would accept such a duel, as victory in these encounters is deemed most glorious. Such confrontations frequently transpire on the battlefield, often only deemed truly honorable if the challenge is accepted. I consent to the duel, however. Might I bring this mouse with me? Yarlin inquired. Absolutely not, Malaise firmly rejected. Unyielding, Yarlin pressed on. Is it truly impossible? Do not think I am unaware of its magical abilities. No means no, Malaise reiterated. Very well then. Let it be a hanging. Yarlin expressed his disappointment, gesturing to the soldiers nearby. How could you act thus? This is disgraceful, Malaise exclaimed, aghast. If you wish to deny me glory, then we must adhere to the old tradition. Let it be a hanging, grant him his honor, Yarlin declared nonchalantly, issuing his final judgment. Under the soldier's execution, Malaise was thus honorably hanged at the cave's mouth, his vibrant attire failing to conceal the terror etched on his face in his final moments. Subsequently, Malaise turned to a nearby pirate and inquired, what news of the dispatch letters? The inebriated pirate tilted his head, squinting as he replied, My Lord Sane, only 4 small pirate crews have responded. Oh, what did they say? Malaise continued, observing him closely. Though he anticipated a sparse response, he did not expect it to be this minimal. He had portrayed the tranquil fleet in his letter as quite dire. Surely, a dozen crews should be willing to take the risk, yet only so few had shown interest. They said they would come, but only after the Torture Abyss pirate conference concludes, he added. What pirate conference? Malaise furrowed his brow, puzzled. The three major pirate crews of Torture Abyss, having profited greatly from their recent plunder, have convened a pirate conference, inviting others to partake in the spoils. The drunken pirate exclaimed, his eyes wide as if witnessing the event firsthand. What pirate conference? It seems these pirates have been manipulated. Torture Abyss employs cunning tactics. With such methods, they need not fear resistance against the Stormfield army, Malaise observed, his eyes narrowing as he unveiled the sordid truth. No one addressed him, and the pirates in the vicinity maintained a brief silence before returning to their hedonistic behavior. In contrast, Malaise's despair deepened. He could only pray that these inept pirates would prove somewhat competent on the battlefield. When Yarlan's tranquil army arrived at the Bloodstone cavern, he dispatched his first masterpiece. An easily trained version of the Mandarin duck formation, awakened from his memories of his previous life. Each square formation is fortified by two massive shields at the front, with two spear wielders and a crossbowman sheltered behind them, as they advance steadily and unhurriedly. The barrage of arrows released from the soldiers hidden in the mountain caves proves utterly ineffective, merely glancing off the shields and sparking harmlessly. The shields are crafted entirely from iron, a testament to the strategic choice of the Tran family, who, despite the island of Grey Gallows being sparsely populated, invest generously in weaponry and armor. Whenever the arrow storm ceases, the archers behind the shields reveal their crossbow bolts and fire towards the cave. Although the impact is minimal, it does achieve some degree of fire suppression, allowing the shield bearers to push forward significantly. Seeing this, Miles realizes a change in strategy is necessary and orders a portion of the pirates to descend the mountain for close combat. As this group of pirates charges towards the Tran forces, the shields of the Tran army swing open, prompting Miles to immediately command a volley of arrows, showing little concern for the fate of his men. However, as the rain of arrows descends, some pirates are pierced by their comrades' shots, while others are impaled by the spears. The spearmen remain shielded, their bodies protected behind the iron barriers, suffering no harm. Miles is engulfed in despair. Only cavalry could counter such formations, yet he finds himself surrounded by pirates. Where could he procure horses? Meanwhile, errant Tran stands behind the shields, flanked by three knight captains who protect him as they slowly advance through the ranks. When the pirates charge, he promptly calls for Pikachu to assist him, seeking a steady and measured approach. As the dying rays of the sun cast a crimson hue over the Bloodstone Mountains, errant Tran finds himself face to face with Miles. In that moment, Miles, steeling himself, declares a challenge for a knightly duel. A knightly duel is a customary practice among noble knights, conducted in formal settings where neither party is permitted to bring attendants, necessitating a one-on-one combat. Unlike trial by combat, it lacks any divine significance, and the challenge party may refuse, though such refusal would invite scorn for cowardice. Most noble knights, valuing their honor, would accept the challenge, as victory in such duels is deemed the most glorious. I agree to the duel, but may I bring this mouse with me? Yaren inquires. No, Miles decisively rejects. Unfazed, Yaren persists. Is it truly impossible? Do not think I am unaware of its magical abilities. No means no, Miles reiterates. Very well, let it hang then. Yaren responds with disappointment, gesturing to the soldiers beside him. How can you act thus? It is dishonorable. Miles, taken aback, urgently exclaimed. If you do not wish for me to meet my end with honor, then we must adhere to tradition. Let him be hanged, and grant him a glorious demise. Unfazed, Yaren made the final pronouncement. Consequently, under the soldiers' actions, Miles was hanged honorably at the cave's entrance, his vibrant attire unable to conceal the terror etched upon his face in those final moments. Miles then turned to a nearby pirate and inquired about the fate of the dispatched letter. The inebriated pirate, his head lolling, squinted and replied, My Lord Sane. Only 4 minor pirate crews have responded. Oh, what did they say? Miles continued to gaze at him, though he had anticipated a meager response. He had not expected it to be so scant. He had depicted the Trailan force in his missive as quite pathetic. Surely, a dozen or so should have been willing to take the risk. The paltry number of pirate crews was concerning. They claimed they would come, but only after the pirate conference at Torture Abyss concluded. What pirate conference? Miles furrowed his brow in confusion. The 3 major pirate crews of Torture Abyss, having reaped substantial rewards from their recent successful plunder, convened a pirate conference, inviting pirates to partake in the distribution of spoils. The drunken pirate proclaimed. Wide-eyed as if you were present at the event. What pirate conference? It appears this band of pirates has been manipulated. The cunning of Torture Abyss is remarkable. They need not fear resistance against the Storm's army, Miles Sane remarked, narrowing his eyes as he unraveled the sordid truth. No one attended to him. The pirates in the vicinity lapsed into a brief silence before returning to their boisterous demeanor. In stark contrast, Miles felt increasingly despondent, now left only to pray that these inept pirates might exhibit some valor on the battlefield. As the Traylon army arrived at the Bloodstone cavern, he deployed his first masterpiece. Born of awakened memories from his previous life, an improvised version of the Mandarin duck formation he had trained. Each square formation was fortified by two massive shields at the front for defense, behind which stood two spear-wielders and a crossbowman. Thus, they advanced slowly and steadily, unfazed by the rain of arrows unleashed from the cave. All projectiles merely slid off the shields, producing sparks upon impact. The shields were entirely iron, a consequence of the population scarcity on Greyshield Island. The Traylon family, favoring a smaller, elite force, spared no expense on weaponry and equipment. Whenever the rain of arrows ceased, the crossbowmen within the shields would brandish their bolts and fire towards the cave. Though the effect was minimal, it succeeded in providing some fire suppression, during which the shield bearers led the charge forward. Witnessing this, Miles Sane realized it was not a viable strategy and ordered a portion of the pirates to charge down the mountain for close combat. As the pirates rushed towards the Traylon forces, the shields of the Traylon army opened. Miles immediately commanded the archers to shoot, showing no concern for the fate of the pirates. Yet, as a volley of arrows descended, some pirates were pierced by their own comrades' bolts, while others fell to the thrusts of spears. The spear-wielders remained shielded, their bodies protected beneath the shields, thus sustaining no injury. Miles found himself engulfed in utter despair. Such a battalion could only be countered by cavalry, yet he was surrounded by pirates. Where could he possibly procure horses? At that moment, Yaren stood behind a wall of shields, flanked by three knight captains who provided protection as they advanced slowly through the ranks. When the pirates charged, he immediately summoned Pikachu for a decisive strike, seeking to fortify his position with calculated precision. As the crimson hues of the setting sun bathed the Bloodstone mountains, Yaren stood resolutely before Miles. With a steely resolve, Miles declared, "I demand a knightly duel." The knightly duel was a customary practice among noble knights, conducted in formal settings. Neither party was permitted to bring attendants, necessitating a one-on-one combat. Unlike trial by combat, it bore no divine significance, and the challenged could refuse, though such a refusal would invite scorn for cowardice. The vast majority of noble knights, valuing their honor, would accept the duel, as victory in such encounters was deemed the most glorious. "I consent, but may I bring this mouse?" Yaren inquired. "Absolutely not," Miles resolutely refused. Undeterred, Yaren pressed on. "Is it truly impossible? Do not think I am unaware of its magical capabilities." "Impossible is impossible," Miles reiterated firmly. "Very well, let it be then," Yaren replied, a hint of disappointment in his voice, and he gestured to the soldiers nearby. "You cannot do this. It is dishonorable," Miles exclaimed, his face a mask of shock and urgency. "It is you who seeks to deprive me of honor. Thus, we must adhere to tradition. Let it be so." "Give him his glory," Yaren declared nonchalantly, issuing the final verdict. Subsequently, under the soldiers' execution, Miles met his end, hanging at the cave's entrance, his vibrant attire failing to conceal the look of terror etched on his face in his final moments. Miles Sane then turned to a nearby pirate and inquired, "What news of the dispatch letters?" The inebriated pirate leaned, squinting as he replied, "Lord Sane, only 4 small pirate crews have responded." "Oh, what did they say?" Miles Sane continued, his gaze fixed on the pirate. Though he had anticipated a meager response, he had not expected it to be so scant. The crew he had depicted in his missive was described in dire terms. Surely, there should have been a dozen or more willing to take the risk. The fact that only so few had come was highly suspicious. They said they would attend, but only after the pirate convention at Torture Abyss concludes, the drunken pirate explained, his eyes wide with excitement, as if reliving the moment. "What pirate convention?" Miles Sane furrowed his brow, perplexed. "The 3 major pirate crews of Torture Abyss, having reaped considerable rewards from their recent plunder, are convening to share the spoils," the pirate elaborated, his enthusiasm palpable. "What a gathering of pirates. I perceive that this group of rogues has been manipulated. The methods employed by the Torture Abyss are indeed cunning. With such strategies, the Abyss need not fear a lack of resistance against the storm of their armies." Miles, squinting, laid bare the sordidness of the situation. No one paid him any heed, and the pirates, after a brief silence, returned to their debauched demeanor. In stark contrast, his despair deepened. All he could do was hope that these wretched pirates would display some semblance of valor on the battlefield. When the forces of Yaren arrived at the Bloodstone cavern, he dispatched his first masterpiece, born from his awakened memories, an improvised formation he had trained, a rudimentary version of the Mandarin duck formation. Each phalanx was fortified by two massive iron shields at the front, behind which were two spear-wielders and a crossbowman. Thus, they advanced steadily and unhurriedly. While the arrows raining down from the soldiers in the caves proved utterly ineffective, merely glancing off the shields and sparking as they fell. The shields, crafted of iron, highlighted the disadvantage of the sparsely populated Greyshield Island. The Tran family, favoring a select troop approach, spared no expense on weaponry and equipment. Whenever the hail of arrows ceased, the crossbowmen behind the shields would unleash their bolts towards the cavern. Though the impact was minimal, it provided a measure of firepower suppression, allowing the shield bearers to push forward significantly. Witnessing this, Miles recognized the futility of the situation and commanded a portion of the pirates to charge down the mountain for close combat. As this band of pirates rushed towards the Tran forces, the shields opened to receive them, and Miles promptly ordered a volley of arrows, indifferent to the fate of the pirates. However, as the storm of blades descended, some pirates were pierced by their comrades' arrows, while others fell to the spears. The spearmen, shielded by their defenses, remained unharmed. Despair engulfed Miles. Such formations could only be countered by cavalry, yet surrounded by pirates. Where could he find horses? Meanwhile, Yaren, positioned behind a wall of shields, was flanked by three knight captains, proceeding slowly at the heart of the formation. When the pirates charged, he immediately summoned Pikachu for a decisive strike, seeking a steady and deliberate approach. As the remnants of the setting sun bathed the Bloodstone mountains in crimson, Yaren stood before Miles. At that moment, Miles, steeling himself, declared, "I demand a duel of knights." A knightly duel is a customary practice among noble knights in formal settings, requiring combat without attendance and demanding one-on-one engagement. Unlike judicial duels, which carry divine significance, the challenged party may refuse, though such refusal would invite scorn for cowardice. Most noble knights, valuing their honor, would acquiesce to the duel, as such contests are regarded as the most glorious victories. These encounters frequently occur on the battlefield, often deemed the hallmark of a well-fought war. "I accept," Yaren replied, "but one-on-one is acceptable only if I may bring this mouse with me." Yaren remarked that mules decisively refused. Undeterred, Yaren, with an audacious demeanor, pressed on. "Is it truly impossible? Do not think I am unaware of its magical abilities." Mules reiterated. "If it cannot be done, then it simply cannot." "Very well, let it be a hanging," Yaren responded, a hint of disappointment in his voice. And he gestured to the soldiers nearby. "How can you act in such a manner? This is dishonorable," Mules exclaimed, aghast and anxious. "It is you who desires to strip me of honor. Thus, we must adhere to tradition. Let it be a hanging. Grant him his honor," Yaren declared nonchalantly, rendering the final verdict. Thereupon, under the soldier's execution, Mules was hung at the mouth of the cave, his vibrant attire failing to conceal the terror etched upon his face in his final moments.